Fiona pulled out of her pocket a small photograph of her son, carefully sealed in cellophane. In the digital age, it's impossible to disappear so that there's nothing left of you. Vincent has been preserved in hundreds, if not thousands, of snapshots, videos, group photos. He's at a wedding, a birthday party, picking up his daughter from the hospital, and everywhere, cheerful, smile to the ears, and nothing really upsets him. But the closest thing Fiona has to a picture of him is a small photograph of him from his studies. Vince isn't just a sailor, he's a graduate, she used to say on such occasions, and pride filled her soul. Then her son and the other applicants were told to bring exactly 3 pictures, 3 by 4 centimeters. Why that number? Why 3? She didn't remember. The atelier took 4 photos, which was the standard. His son had given 3 to the dean's office, and Vince had left 1 for his mother to keep in case she needed it. And she'd liked that little thing better than all the presents he'd given her, and the son was grateful. He bought her a meat grinder, a coffee grinder, a rheumatism pillow, and a zirconium bracelet. He gave her money, not a son, but gold. Fiona told her friends, "Oh, Mom, are we going to sue or what?" Tina, the daughter-in-law, asked impatiently, where did he find such a chick? When Vince had first brought his future wife home, Fiona hadn't liked her. She wrinkled her nose like she didn't like the smell of sauerkraut soup. But Fiona had made a huge pot of it that day, not enough for a company, of course, but enough for a squad that cooked for a whole week so they wouldn't have to think about it. Tina is not like that. She cooks a little at a time, cook and eat. With a mom like that, Mike won't get fat. "Mom, why are we talking?" My daughter-in-law wouldn't stop. "Are you hoping for something else? Where are we going to live, Mom?" At these words, Fiona usually began to cry, but to herself. No one heard the sobs or saw the tears. From the outside, it looked like she was just staring into the void, but there was a fire raging inside. She gave up quickly. Fiona thought at times like this, "I told him," but Tina had done at least one good deed. And what a good one. She gave her a grandson that all the neighbors envied. Mike, at the age of 4, already spoke well, knew all the letters and could count to 10. If it wasn't for him, Fiona would have gone mad a long time ago. And Mike appreciated her simple cooking, sauerkraut soup, homemade cutlets, finger-thick pancakes, and other culinary delights. "Mom," Tina persisted. "Oh, I'm not your mother." Fiona shouted harshly. "I'm not your mother, get it through your head." Why was her daughter-in-law so rude to her? She could have called her you like the day she met her. Oh yes, she suggested we use you. How could it be otherwise with her son's future wife and future mother of grandchildren? Maybe Fiona's too hard on her daughter-in-law. Tina's understandable too. Fiona's only looking at their situation from her own vantage point. It must be hard for Tina too, but that's no reason to call her mom. Just answer me a question. Tina pleaded for the umpteenth time. We have to do this together. I want it to be legal, the law. She's a lawyer. She knows all the ins and outs of the law. Vince was a simple man. He did his own repairs and rebuilt his car in the garage. If Mike had been a little older, he'd have started to get into men's work. All the more reason for him to take an interest in them. All the time he walked around the house with a toy screwdriver and hammer and looked for something to fix. He even asked her, "Me, Tina, my soul," Fiona said in a different tone of voice. "Let's wait a little longer." How can you do that to a living person? How can we wait any longer? Tina replied, and her face twisted. I've been waiting for a whole year. I have to live somehow. And your grandson too, by the way. At times like this, Fiona stared at Mike's face, and then she'd be reassured. No, that's definitely her grandson. Same forehead, same nose and eyes, and most of all, the smile. She remembered Vincent smiling at the same like twin brothers, only 30 years apart. When Tina started to talk about how she should live her life, Fiona's doubts crept into her soul. Why have you already looked for someone? Fiona asked sternly and answered without waiting for an answer. If you've got your eye on her, don't bring her into the house. Mike Vinzalevich shouldn't see such things. It was Tina's turn to take offense. She, a sailor's wife, was used to her husband's long business trips. The ocean is such a thing. Here errors are measured not in minutes, but in weeks. And a small trip for a month could well turn into a 6-month absence. She had always counted the days until they met and had never given even the slightest reason to doubt her own fidelity. But now was a different matter. And who better than his wife to understand that? Enough. I'm tired, said Tina. I'm tired of these quarrels of accusations. I don't need anything from you personally. I'm doing What about watching Mike? Fiona interrupted. Thank you for that. But I could do it myself. Of course she could, thought Fiona. She can't boil her own soup. She can't light a candle. A child is hard work. She taught her everything, even how to swaddle and rock the baby. After all, they had a good relationship at first, and Fiona really tolerated Tina calling her mom. But then they couldn't take it anymore, and they had a fight. You're yelling, Fiona tried to attack again, but Mike hears everything. He hears and remembers. I'm not the only one yelling, Tina replied. We've been standing here for half an hour wasting time, and you still haven't answered my question. She switched to you. It cut Fiona like a knife. One moment, and they'd be strangers. What's it to her? She'll find herself a new man. Maybe she'll have kids for him. She'll call another woman mom. And what's left for her, Fiona? Just Mike. Vincent's her only child. She wanted a second one, but it wasn't meant to be. She'd go to the ends of the earth for Vince like a Decemberist wife. Except she's not a wife, she's a mother. Oh, I am, by the way, Tina said, bracing herself. But at that moment a boy ran in. Mommy, woman, Mike shouted. The letter, where did you find it? Tina asked. She picked up the envelope, which for some reason had no writing on it except their address. Under the door, Fiona felt uncomfortable in any government offices. She stepped on the parquet flooring and feared damaging it. She looked at the luxurious wall and ceiling finishes, the expensive furniture, and felt like a poor relative visiting a rich uncle. True, today she was greeted with a friendly welcome and talked to her as if she owed her something. But she often watched soap operas and remembered how in one movie they talked to a seriously ill boy in the same tone, and they promised him everything. It's a pity that only Mom came, said the big boss. We would have had a wife, of course, but we mothers can easily understand each other and find a common language. We had to go far away, to the regional center, not a very close light. And for some reason, no one told her the reason. They only said that it had to do with her son. Although the workers tried to make her feel welcome, Fiona felt uncomfortable. All those high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, it wasn't hers. It felt awkward and scary, as if Fiona could do something that would make the expensive parquet crack, or the chandelier collapsed. The woman did not understand any chic, neither this ingratiating tone nor the essence of the conversation. She was received by the head of some department. Fiona didn't remember her title or name. She sat down at a long table right next to her, explained something, and held her hand. How is it that you are being held hostage? Fiona asked. What do you mean kidnapped? The woman in the red jacket only shrugged her shoulders. Fiona's mind was a jumbled mess. All she knew was that her son was at sea, that he was working for some African company. It's not a cruise, not an easy ride, but hard work. Vincent is an expert. He can fix the engine of a huge diesel ship under the most difficult conditions. How could he be taken hostage? The warden was literally trying to sweeten the pill. She put a cup of tea in front of her, a plate of candy, and cookies. But the terrible news about her son made her unable to eat. A woman of strong character never showed that she was afraid or hurt, but this is different. It's like they're hiding something from the old lady. What are we supposed to do? Fiona asked. All we can do is be patient, the woman said. A whole team of specialists is working on your son's rescue. If anyone can help him, it's them. How do you call them? Fiona asked again. Those specialists. Unfortunately, I can't tell you, the woman sighed. Actually, it's a secret. I signed an affidavit. I could get in trouble. I've already said too much, like a mother to her mother. The day before, the call had taken the whole family by surprise. It was the 5th month of Vince's voyage, and he was due to return. The ocean is an element. Even experienced sailors do not say categorically the day of the end of the voyage. Then he had to get on a plane to Manchester, and from there to their distant destinations. So when the high office called, neither she nor Tina took it too seriously. Come to think of it, an offer to come to the administration office. Her daughter-in-law went to pick up her child from the kindergarten, and she, Fiona, went to the meeting with the official. after the words of the woman in the beautiful jacket. However, there were more questions than answers. There hadn't been a call or a message from Vincent in a month. In principle, this was not unprecedented. The sea was an element. Ships break down, get lost, and then take a long time to find them in open water. But Vince had been sailing for 10 years. He'd always come back in one piece. That's why they were worried, but not too worried. What do they want with them? Fiona asked. She had finally regained her ability to think. Money, the woman in the red jacket sighed. All terrorists want money. So let's raise it, Fiona suggested. Let's put out a call to the whole world. We can't, said the woman. Why did we call you here? So you wouldn't think of transferring any money, let alone collecting it. So that you sit quietly and wait for the situation to be resolved. We don't know for sure what could hurt them. It's a very complicated situation. You must understand that. So you can't even write to Andrew? Fiona asked. Oh, absolutely not, the woman nodded. No publicity. Me. Why not? Fiona wondered. I'm telling you again, the woman said in a tone that brooked no objection. They're specialists. You can't interfere with them. They may call you, write to you, demand money, ask for an interview. Do not agree. This is a very serious situation. When Fiona returned to her hometown, the weather was perfect. Spring had sprung. Here by the sea, the seasons are smoothed out. And after a little inclement weather, warmth comes at once, and with it, hope. But Fiona was not happy about the good weather. She couldn't believe what was happening. It turns out that her Vincent, a longtime sailor, had been taken hostage. Who had kidnapped him? When did this happen? Apparently not more than a month ago. They were talking on Messenger. Everything was fine. What's she gonna tell her daughter-in-law? What about Mike? That night, she and Tina had their first big fight. Vincana's wife demanded maximum publicity, kept trying to record the clips on her expensive cell phone and call the TV stations. And Fiona talked her out of it. Her grandson watched the bickering and wept bitterly. At some point, they were both so distracted that they didn't notice the boy at all. I'm telling you, Fiona, that you have to shout. You have to ring all the bells, Tina said. Otherwise, they won't get my husband out. Oh, for God's sake, replied Fiona. I told you to stay out of the way. Don't make any calls. Don't answer any calls. Mike's father is being taken away, and you're so calm about it. The daughter-in-law wouldn't. It was then that the attitude towards her son's wife began to change. 6 months of waiting had worn them both out, and most importantly, Tina began to insinuate that Vincent's apartment should be left. She shouldn't be living there now that her son was missing. Fiona was also financially involved in the construction and renovation, so she pretended not to understand the hints. They'll manage, Fiona said, either to herself or to her daughter-in-law. Do you know what kind of trouble Vince had gotten himself out of? They'll be fine. But Tina didn't say anything. She had calmed down a little and was looking at her son with fear and hope. So the letter. Tina held it in her hands for a long time, hesitating to open it. It offered some hope, but only as long as it remained sealed. If the envelope was torn open, the magic would be gone. Her mother-in-law looked at her without trying to take the letter, as if she recognized her priority right to the news. But Mike was impatient. He had not forgotten that he had a father, and every day he waited for his return. Oh, Mom, open up, he said. It's Daddy. Is there a car in there? The little boy took after his father. He just adored machinery. Tina and her mother-in-law bought him cars that could be disassembled and reassembled with a toy screwdriver. The child loved to twist nuts and kept imagining how he would fix a real car with his dad. Mike hadn't forgotten that his father brought him a lot of toys from every voyage. The best unprecedented one. Tina opened the envelope. Alas, there was no miracle. Instead of a letter from her husband, instead of a little news about him, a lawsuit from the bank. They'd bought the apartment with a mortgage, and Vince was handling the payments. He'd throw money into the account himself, usually with a reserve. But many months ago, the money ran out. She's already gotten calls from the bank threatening eviction. Might please collect principal, interest, legal fees, she read disappointedly. Hey, you foreclose on the apartment and put it up for public auction. We have to pay. Said the mother-in-law. You don't want us to be thrown out on the street, do you? Tina, of course, was not a lawyer, but she understood the seriousness of the situation well. If there are no payments, If the bank loses money, it will definitely want to take the apartment. Nothing will stop this financial institution. Neither a weeping widow with a living husband, nor a small child. Only a balanced and reasoned position could make a difference. She was promised to the last minute that they would not be evicted anywhere, and the bank would not go to court. This was said both in the bank and in the administration. Apparently, they changed their minds, or a new employee came and did everything in his own way. Tina began to sob. Tears shook her shoulders, choked her, and she couldn't stop. "Oh, let me read it," asked her mother-in-law. She took the documents, began to look at them, and even recognized familiar letters and words. But where could she understand the meaning of the sentences? All that was obvious to Fiona was that they wanted to throw her out on the street. She had nowhere to go. Fiona held back, put the letter in her bag, and went to the administration office. This time, the officials were not so friendly. She had been here twice since that day, but they had never offered her tea and candy. And today, the head of the department was in no hurry to see her. She made her wait for an hour and then went out into the corridor. Fiona noticed that she was wearing a different jacket, one half white, the other black. It wasn't anything beautiful, but it was probably worth a lot. "No news," the woman said. "Nothing encouraging. We'll just have to wait. Here, take a look." Said Fiona and showed the woman the lawsuit. She probably knew the law. As she read, she nodded her head as if in agreement with the bank. Fiona looked at her face, less than 40 years old, still young and already in such a position. She must be promoting someone, or she must be a very valuable specialist herself. "Well," said the official, "the situation is difficult, but not critical. Are you already working with a lawyer? If I don't have money for a loan, where will I get money for a lawyer?" Fiona asked her. "There's no need to despair," the woman said. "Wait here. I'm going to make a copy of it and ask our lawyers to help. I think there's some way out. What do I care about your lawyers?" thought Fiona. "I've got one of those sitting at home. She can't even boil soup." The official vanished behind her door and Fiona had to wait again. Now she had to go to the bank. It was already 5 in the evening when she entered the premises. Beautiful, just like the administration office, but a little more modest. Here she was received much faster, and in 10 minutes she was already sitting in front of a young girl in a white shirt and glasses. Very pretty. "I wish my Vince had one of those." Fiona, and for some reason she began to blush. "She wouldn't call me Mom." The girl ran her eyes over the lawsuit, looked something up on her computer. Then she picked up the phone and called, but spoke so quietly that Fiona did not hear a single word, although she was sitting literally 2 meters away. Then the girl checked something on the computer again and looked at her visitor. "There is a way out, of course," she answered, "but you'd better talk to my management. Please go up to the 34th office on the 2nd floor." Fiona sighed and rose from her chair. Her legs were aching from the constant moving. She had to go again, and she wasn't 18 anymore. She'd had children late. What could she do? On the other hand, she had plenty of strength, especially in the morning. If she had to, she could get Mike back on his feet by herself. The crew of that ill-fated boat was international, and Vince, it turns out, was the only dude on the boat. Or as they say abroad, Russian-speaking. He knew foreign languages well himself. Always said he could easily understand his own team. The easy character of a mechanic was so important on long voyages, where people are locked in small cabins for months. "We speak the language of technology," Vince said with his perpetual smile. "Me and my boys are on the same page." The rest of them were Chinese, Indonesians, and other countries Fiona couldn't remember the names of. And since neither she nor her daughter-in-law spoke the language, there was no way to communicate with their families. They both wanted to know if there was any news, if their loved one was all right. Together with Tina, they tried to search the internet for any information about the hijacking, but found nothing. Vince's phone was silent, too, although his messengers were working. Together, they had gone to various officials and had heard from them at first condolences and sympathy, then threats. Especially when they turned to the police with a statement about the missing person. That same evening, a man called Fiona's phone and she didn't like the conversation. Besa Tsumange in Russian. Some man who identified himself as a major swore into the phone. "We'll get them back. We will save your son and your husband. No amateurishness, no going to the police. Wait for further instruction." Maybe if Fiona were younger, If she had a lot of work and things to do, it would be easier for her. But as it was, she lived only for her son and grandson, going through every watch with him. Anxious waiting literally wore out her soul. With all this could be put up with for a while, if it were not for the prospect of being on the street. Ever since she was a child, she had been taught that a person should have a home. Out there in the West, you could live your whole life in a rented apartment or in a trailer. In Africa, under the scorching tropical sun, you can dig a dugout or hide in a pub. Your own living space is a cult. And Fiona also practiced this religion. One time, a shipping company representative got in touch with them. He was very apologetic about his language, though his speech was excellent. He only asked which account to transfer the money. Fiona was very happy. Tina gave her details, confident that the bank would sort it out. They'd transferred a small amount of money to her once and then forgotten about it. They must have thought they were in the clear. Fiona had one son and 2 daughters. When Vince grew up and bought an apartment, she sold hers immediately. She split the money equally between the kids and moved in with her son. Tina may not have liked it, but she didn't show it. The apartment is large, nice, 3 rooms. However, when Mike was born, her grandmother's help came in handy. Now Fiona thought she'd been a fool to sell her apartment. She was a nobody here, just a tenant with a stamp in her passport. Yeah, she still had the summer house. When Vince was at the beach, when the family needed to be left alone, she could get out of town. And when Mike got older, she could take him with her. But now they're being asked to pay or leave. What's she gonna do? She can't live at the cottage. Although winters here are warm, not so warm that you can do without hot water and a radiator. And she didn't have any of that at the dacha. She didn't have it. She didn't earn it. She spent it all on her Vince and her daughters. And boredom there at the Duchess. No stores, no playgrounds. Going away with my daughter. Kate and Vivi would love to take her in. But they're young, no husbands, no children. What if she stops them from building their own happiness, their own families? No, she belongs here, back home. She has to wait for Vincent and help her son and grandson to go up to the 2nd floor. The same polite and serious girl escorted her to the door and opened it with her card. Fiona wasn't thrilled with such high technology. If she lost her card, how would she get in? It's kind of like a factory on the 2nd floor. Only here they don't make cell phones, sew clothes, or pour Licos into jars to roll them into canned food. Big people were making money. Things were probably going well because the floors, walls, and ceilings had been renovated very well. Fiona looked at her shoes. Clearly you could ruin the interior by walking in such cheap and dirty shoes. There was paneling on the walls as if mahogany had been used. The floor had expensive tiles of enormous size like marble. One of the doors was already open, and a man, not at all like the boss, was standing near it. Tight, fresh, in a neat suit. He greeted the visitor with a nod of his head and motioned for her to come. In this office, Fiona felt her financial insolvency even more acutely. She wanted to sit on a chair in the corner, but the man pulled out a chair and gestured for her to sit down. "It's beautiful here," the woman said. She almost forgot why she had come. "It's like a museum." "Thank you," the man replied. "It is customary to address employees by their first names. You can just call me Adrian." Fiona said, and the man in the nice jacket smiled. Yes, Fiona, I'm aware of that. Let's not waste any time. I'm fully immersed in your briefcase." "Immersed in what?" The woman interrupted him. She really wanted the expensive man in the expensive jacket to speak in words familiar to her. "I know all the details of the situation," he explained. "That the borrower has disappeared, your son, and I can only express my regrets." "Can you not evict him from the apartment?" Fiona asked. "That's what I'm talking about." He nodded again. "We can give you credit vacations, and we can cancel the debt, but we need a court order to do that." "A what?" There was hope in my grandmother's soul. "Don't make me say it out loud," he asked, "because I have a hard time with words like that." Fiona didn't understand anything. Why was this handsome man speaking in riddles? Somehow she didn't believe that he could feel sympathy for her. He who sits near big money eventually becomes gold himself. "Oh, I can take it," the woman said stubbornly. "Okay," Adrian nodded. "You applied at the court on the recognition of your son dead." "What do you mean dead?" said the woman, devastated. He's not dead. That's what I'm talking about, the man replied. He seemed glad his guest hadn't fainted. Fiona sighed. Why did they all want her son Vince to be declared dead? The banker and Tina, he's not dead, she can feel it. He's just in trouble, he needs help, and they're burying him alive. It was hard for her to imagine something like that. What would happen when Vince came back? It's the only workable option, Adrian said. Then we can make a deal. The administration will go. What if I don't agree? Fiona asked. If I believe that my son will come back, alive and well. He eyes expressed sincere sympathy. She had never seen such handsome bosses before, and how polite he was. Couldn't he just cancel the debt so that neither Fiona nor her grandson would end up on the street? If you don't agree, then this conversation never happened, he said after a long silence. You understand? My bosses won't give me a hard time. If they find out that I'm giving advice here, please think about it, and I have to get back to my duty. The call from the district administration took Tina by surprise. She, a modest lawyer from a small company, did not understand the message or its purpose. She had been invited to the administration to deliver a message in person. Why would she spend 2 hours on a shuttle bus to hear something that couldn't be said over the phone? Hello, said a woman's voice, seemingly devoid of emotion. You and Fiona have been asked to appear before the head of the public relations department tomorrow to discuss your husband. Has he done something wrong? Tina asked anxiously. Probably not, the voice replied. But I can't say for sure. No, what about him? We don't know. The woman sighed, and some emotion flickered in her voice. Unfortunately, is he alive? Tina asked. According to our information, yes, answered the voice and did not allow to continue questioning. If you come to us tomorrow, we can find out a little more. Understand, you don't say these things over the phone. The most frustrating thing was that she was never told anything concrete. You have to go to the reception, and that's it. Therefore, she was skeptical about the proposal to go to the district administration. Why when she had enough to do? Vincent was alive, hadn't done anything wrong, so everything was all right. He'd be home soon, but when her agitated mother-in-law returned after the reception, it was as if the world had turned upside down. Vince had been taken hostage or captured by saboteurs or pirates, some kind of ransom demand, but not from them. The amount is unknown, but it's enormous, the kind of money they can't raise on their own. The uncertainty in which the young woman found herself was simply boundless. Tina could not believe for a long time that it was not an evil joke or a stupid place on the internet. And on television, there are only jokes. It's like people have lost the ability to be serious. Her Vince, the flight mechanic, became a hostage. It sounded as fantastic as if she'd won $1 million in the lottery. Theoretically, maybe, but it better not be true. Oh, what a cross, Fiona said. She told me the truth. I believe it, Mom, I believe it, Tina replied. In fact, she had her doubts. The conversation with her mother-in-law had made her see things differently. That day, Tina was filled with a thirst for activity. She wanted to shout her distress, to ring all the bells. But Fiona convinced her it was better to keep quiet. There were risks. What could she get from her Vincent? If he was to be ransomed, it would be money she didn't have. But as the months passed, and the second and third, Tina began to realize that she was getting used to the absence of her husband. At first, there was a wound in her soul, then an emptiness that she tried to fill with memories. How they'd gotten to know each other, started dating, and then lived together. Vince, 10 years older, her first and only love, and the way he'd courted her. They met in St. New York. Tina was born and raised there, and Vince was there for some training to get a higher position. He came up to her on the street and spoke to her, smiling. Maybe in his small coastal town that was the custom, but in New York, it was a rare thing. He'd asked her out for wine, not coffee, and their affair had begun. That same evening, Vince asked her out for a walk along the waterfront. He gave her a place and time and told her not to be late. And when she showed up for her date with a tall, smiling man, he suggested they go up on a boat. Turns out Vince had rented it, and he drove it as well as he drove a car. It's a nice car, her husband to be explained. Very easy to drive. Navigation's great, look at this. Do you want to try it? Vince talked a lot of smart words about speed, displacement, comparing the boat to the competition. Tina couldn't say she liked the look of it, but she was impressed. It took them only 2 weeks to fall in love with each other. He had a place in her heart, and what had happened couldn't be considered a romance between a young man from out of town and a local princess. When Vince left for his hometown, she knew they'd see each other again. And so they did. He'd gone on long voyages, traveled the length and breadth of the earth, but he'd always come back. He was gone for months, but when he came back, he belonged only to spend as much time together as possible. They moved to his homeland, in a small southern town by the sea. They rented an apartment and got married. She found a job, even in her specialty, not dusty at all. True, she was not offended not only by the duties, but also by the large salary. With the money Vince brought back from his trips, they lived happily ever after. Then, a couple years later, Mike was born, and the family was complete. Though Tina had hoped that her husband would quit his voyages and find a job ashore, nothing of the sort happened. Vince lived the sea, dreamed of it. He knew the elements like a whale. He could look up at the sky and tell when it was going to rain, how long a storm would last. There was no other man like him on earth. "You're the only one like you in the whole world," he told her. I'm lucky to have you, waiting for me like the wind in the calm. You know I'll definitely come back." Thanks to the internet, even the longest separation became bearable. They could communicate, if not every night, then several times a week. Vince told Misha's stories from across the ocean, scolded him if he refused to eat, and he sent pictures and videos that took his breath away. But then Vincent disappeared, and no one could shed any light on the mystery of his disappearance. It must be that if her husband had been assigned to a Russian port, she could have gone somewhere, complained, demanded something. But as it was, even the owner of the ship was far away. Mike grew up without a father. Her meager salary was enough only for the bare necessities. Every day she called her mom and sobbed into the phone about how hard it was. Tina," her mom would say, "drop everything and come back. You'll be here waiting for your sailor, but what can you do? At home, the walls help. Mom, my home is here." "What about our apartment?" Tina asked. "All that money we invested." "Oh, Tina, you can't bring a house to New York," Mom said. You're a grown woman and you know what to do." The apartment was a real shame. This house was obviously not built for the locals, but for those who wanted to have a comfortable residence by the sea. And more money had been invested here than in an average apartment in New York. A beautiful architecture, comfortable layouts, a front entrance, which was called in the Western manner, the lobby. Tina, her mother said into the phone, "I told you right away that marriage to a sailor is a lottery. But you don't listen to anyone. Mom, don't start our way. You know what to do. If you want to come back, we're waiting." And she did know. She may not be a good lawyer, she may not be an outstanding one, but the solution was self-evident. She could sell the apartment with the bank's permission, pay off the debt, which was not even half of the market price, and return to her home, build a career, eventually forget Vince, and start a new family. But how do you decide to do that? The waiting had devastated Fiona. At 63, she was already retired, but she still worked. In one store, doing cleaning, scrubbing floors, and in the second, gluing stickers on products. They even put that funny word in the... Fiona worked so hard not only because her pension was modest, like everyone she knew in this town. She just couldn't sit in one place. She had to keep moving. Vincent was the same, and it seemed Mike had picked up their energy gene. Though Fiona didn't tell anyone about her trouble, word spread quickly through the town. Some even offered to raise money, but the proud woman refused. "Vince is alive. Vince is alive." She'd tell her friends if they were too far apart in their pessimistic predictions. "He'll be back. I've dreamed it." It was at times like this that Fiona was wrong. She didn't really remember dreams. She'd been making them up for as long as she could remember. So if Vince visited her, even if he tried to say something to her in the dark world, she couldn't remember it in real life. Fiona, any news?" Nellie, her worst friend in the very store where Fiona was cleaning. "No," Fiona answered. As soon as it's clear, you'll be the first to know." And there were those who spread the ugliest rumors. That Vince had left his wife, child, and mother to live in Australia. I'd seen his account on an English social network and almost talked to him. And that his name was no longer Vince, but William, or that her son, the purest of souls, was in an African prison. drugs or guns, but betrayed by his own crew. As her friends recounted these rumors floating around town, Fiona wanted to howl with grief. In fact, it could very well be true. After all, she hadn't heard from her son in almost 6 months. When Fiona imagined the kidnappers, for some reason she thought they were pirates and that they lived on an island with, a deep cove that you can't see from this, and that they had a whole village with a separate cage where the slaves were kept. And there's Vince, surrounded but not broken. He walks around the cage, turns in circles, looks his captors in the eye and says, "You're lying, you can't take him." And they're so scared of him, they can't even let him go. In this picture of the pirate world fit the fact that for several months the mysterious kidnappers did not even let her son make a call or at least send news to his family. The thought that pirates could be so inhumane made Fiona sick to her stomach. Fiona had spent her whole life in her town and knew everyone here. So when she sat at her second job in the evening and pasted stickers on some boxes of Chinese toys, she wasn't too surprised at Semyonova. She was not young either, but she was fresher than Fiona. She was 57 or 58 years old. She and Semyonova weren't really friends. They just said hello if they met each other on the street or in the store. "My Fiona, said the postmistress from the doorstep. "Phew, what is it?" Fiona wondered. "Boy, a letter, a real letter. Oh, from where?" Fiona jumped up from her chair, and the sudden rise made her lower back ache. "Oh, I know where from. Africa," Sandra replied. "Did you bring it?" Fiona asked and felt tears running down her cheeks against her will. It was the waiting, the longing. "You brought it here, didn't you?" "No, of course not," said the postmistress. "What are you doing?" "It's registered mail. It should be handed over at the post office if you show your passport." Here's the thing. The letter came to an address. The recipient is not listed there. "So what?" "What?" Fiona asked. "It means that the letter can be received by anyone of legal age who lives at that address, as long as they have a registration." "You've got a registration? Haven't you, friend?" Fiona wanted to say that Sandra's soul was a manual, but she decided not to spoil relations with the messenger, who might well bring good news. She just sighed, adjusted her sweater, and checked her passport in her bag. Here it was, sitting in the secret compartment, along with a $5,000 bill. Like any grandmother, Fiona always carried her passport in her bag, for a reason known only to old people. "Okay, let's go," Fiona said. "I'll finish the stickers afterward. It's okay, no one's going to die." "Let's not go, we'll run," Sandra corrected her. "The branch closes in half an hour. Then that's it. No more letters, no more mail. We'll be there in time." In another situation, Fiona would have been amused by the postmistress's zealousness in following instructions. But she herself wanted to run away. The waiting was so tedious. She would have sprinted if it hadn't been for her age and chronic joint pain. There was light at the end of the tunnel, and she wanted to catch at least a small ray of warmth. The sea was not an element, but life. Maybe his unbridled passion for sailing was due to his complete lack of seasickness. Even in the worst storms, even in the most violent rocking, Vince kept a clear and bright head. He didn't get sick. He didn't lose his mind like dozens of other sailors he'd met along the way. He even gloated when a crewman, a particularly impressionable one, began to weep with fear. The storm was just making Vince feel better, not scaring him. "If you're so scared, why did you go out to sea?" he asked. "You could have sat on the beach and thrown your fishing rod in the water." Life on land was another matter. He wasn't comfortable here. Vince didn't understand many people, and he was bored on shore. Good thing he was lucky to have a wife. She knew how to wait. She knew how to support and inspire. Everything else didn't work out so well. When he was renovating, they tried to cheat him out of prices. First on the apartment, then on building materials and furniture. And he couldn't even argue with them. Good thing Tina wasn't like that. She immediately took the initiative and put in place those who tried to deceive him. Destroyed by some norms, quotes, threatened with instances, but in the right place. A lawyer, what can I say? The next flight, at first glance, was no different from the previous ones. And yet it was special, unique, just as the sea was never the same. Vincent did not expect the ship to be captured by black militants. He didn't see the most intense part of the performance, the capture. While he sat in the engine room, the roar of the engines blocked out any noise outside, and then he was followed by his own, a Briton Peter, whom Vince called Pete. The mechanic was surprised at his colleague. They worked in shifts, and today was not his day. "Turn it off." "Come on," he said in English. "We've been captured." Vince thought he had misunderstood his comrade. He carefully shut down the engine, checked the instruments and gauges. "Everything's fine." "Oh, I'm sorry. What happened?" "Captured," replied the Brit. "The terrorists you call pirates are on board, just as they were 200 years ago. They snuck up in their dinghies, ran onto the bridge. We had no time to open our mouths." "Why didn't the captain give the command to kill the engine?" Vince asked. "Why did he send you? Those savages took him off the bridge. They don't even know how to use the comms." "Relax, that's not the worst of it. After all, they didn't fire a single round at us. Yeah, there can't be a mistake. The entire crew, all 30 of them, were standing on deck. The only time they all got together was on shore before the launch. And on the way, everyone has his own task. They have no time to stand in a single line, and here they are. Only instead of an employer, they were armed men in masks. All of them were thin, if not to say skinny, but they held their automatic rifles tightly, even if they didn't point them at the team. No need for heroism," the captain said to his men. "The pirates had tied his hands for some reason. We will proceed according to protocol." The capture was different from what Vince had seen in the movies. No one shouted or fired. The pirates were calm, even casual. Most of the crew were locked up, but the chief flight engineer and Vince were sent back to the engine room. The invaders were not very good with machinery. One of the skinny, dark-haired guys took over, his mask off his lips and his eyes still closed. "Let's do something," Vince suggested when they were back to their usual work. "We can't do this." "Relax," Peter replied. "They're not going to do anything to us. Just follow their commands. There are only 5 of them." Vince resented them. "There are 30 of them. They've got machine guns," the Brit said firmly. "You dudes don't know how to look at a situation soberly. You want to show who's boss. Trust me, and you'll be home in a month," he agreed. But when they went upstairs and saw the pirate in the mechanics things, Vince's indignation was boundless. The masked man was wearing his tactical pants and vest, which he'd recently bought at the port for a decent sum. Not only were they beautiful, but they were brand new. He wanted to go fishing in them. Peter saw Vince heading toward the masked corsair and grabbed his shoulder. "Relax," the Brit said. "It's close. You have a wife and son waiting for you at home. I'm convinced that by the end of the month you'll be able to see them and hug them." 6 months passed. Vince tried to figure out how it was that he was the only one of the crew left with the pirates. It must have started the day after he'd bailed out the pirates for the first time. Almost the entire crew, except for 4 men, were loaded into dinghies and sent to the old bark. Their 5 more dark-skinned pirates were waiting for them. As the boats sailed away from their home ship, Vince was glad for the good weather. It was just their luck that the water was calm today. They would have capsized in a heartbeat if there had been any rough sea. The diesel engines could hardly pull the boats. One way or another, they reached the pirate schooner, which was also living out its last days. After only an hour's journey, the longboat stood up. Vincent could hear by the sound of it that the engine was out of order. He was accustomed to thinking of machinery as music. This engine was clearly faltering, failing. The pirates began to swear, and at one point almost started shooting at each other. But then one of them, the oldest, with a real bandage on his face, fixed his one eye on the captured crew. "Technician," he said in broken English. "EIF fix. Who?" Vince took a step forward. If they were to be captured, it was better to swim to shore than to drift endlessly in the vast ocean. He went down to the engine room and tinkered with the engine for several hours before it came to life. The dark-skinned pirate, who was in charge of the machinery, wanted to add speed, but Vince slapped him on the palm of his hand. The invader grinned like a beast and went for the mechanic. "You what?" he said, snatching up the knife. "Don't you need a hand?" But at that moment, the one-eyed pirate, the oldest looking, grabbed the troublemaker by the shoulder and playfully threw him to the floor. He must have had a lot of strength to stop the young and tall man with such ease. The old pirate said a few words to his young companion, who grinned once more and left. How long is it?" Vince asked. 50 miles. The one-eyed corsair answered in a terrible accent. Can we make it? Vincent nodded. We'll make it. Fiona held the letter in her hand and smiled stupidly with excitement. It was definitely from Vince. Well done. He'd found a way to send word to his family. The envelope looked as if it had traveled halfway around the world before reaching their seat. There were so many stamps on it that there was hardly any space left. On the letter, stamps with exotic images, tropical fruits, animals, rulers in African national costumes. Fiona didn't bother to open the envelope. She thought it was a great chance to repair her relationship with her daughter-in-law. They'd read the happy news together, find out when Vince was coming home, and they'd get on well like old times and be sure to sort out the bank and other problems. Tina, are you home? Fiona asked her daughter-in-law, dialing her number on the phone. They had rarely dialed each other lately. Yes, the young woman answered. What's wrong? Oh, there's a letter here. Again, Tina said, confused. Where did it come from this time? No, it's a different letter. Fiona's optimism was overflowing. It's African. If you're home, I'll be right there. We'll take a look at it together. I haven't opened it yet. I want you to open it, Tina. Mike was concentrating for the umpteenth time on assembling his logging truck. It was his favorite toy. Dad had bought it at a stall when they'd been out together on his last shore vacation. Instead of a cab, for some reason, it had a cat's head. The toy makers from the Celestial Empire must have put some meaning into it, which is not fully understood by a Russian person. But Mike was fine with it. A cat's head on a logging truck. That's the way it should be. Oh, you open the door, Tina suggested. You have a lucky hand. Fiona wanted to ask her daughter-in-law to call her you again. Yes, she'd overreached and even broken it. She'd been too hard on her daughter-in-law all these months. But they can make up and live in harmony again. It just takes a small thing, a little bit of certainty, so that they know when to expect the return of their husband, son, and father. No, darling, you open it, Fiona said. It's your husband, so I have to move. A mother's share is small. She bore him, gave birth, led him into the world. And then the wife is responsible. Tina opened the envelope in excitement, unfolded the letter, but the joyful expectation on her face was suddenly replaced by surprise and then indignation and anger. After reading, the girl folded the letter and grabbed the letter as if she wanted to tear it, but changed her mind. Tina looked gloatingly at her mother-in-law and handed her the paper. Here, she said. Look at it. Fiona took the paper. The language of the letter seemed to be Russian, but at first she read and reread it, unable to understand a word. Or rather, the general meaning came to her, but she refused to believe it. Mike assembled the car and decided to see what his mother and grandmother were doing. The little boy went up to Fiona, took her hand, and burped. Bah, is it 100? Oh, Mike. Oh, Grandma, read it, asked the little boy. Fiona gave in and began to read the letter aloud. We regret to inform you that Vincent Yen, an employee of Transaf United, has violated the terms of his contract and has been out of contact for several months. The dry cargo ship with crew along with Vincent N was captured on 10/5/2021. The company took exhaustive measures to search for and recover Vincent N, the onboard mechanic, the remaining crew member. By the time of the hijacking, the vessel under his command was traveling with its transponder turned off. According to information received from the Moroccan Special Police, Vincent N is not in captivity and his whereabouts have been approximated. In view of this information, the contract has been terminated. For final payments, please contact the company's Morocco office at... Grandma, I don't get it. I don't understand, Mike said. He, like all small children, could repeat the same phrase dozens of times. Oh, come here, little boy, Tina said. Come here, I'll show them all, Fiona shouted. I'll go to Andean tomorrow. No, the president, you can go higher than that, grinned her daughter-in-law. You should make an appointment with the Almighty. At your age, I will not tolerate blasphemy in my house. Fiona said loudly, and Mike started crying again. But Tina didn't escalate the conflict. She took her son and went into the other room. Fiona thought she really should go to church, and the sooner the better. Without his intercession, this show definitely wouldn't get sorted out. Their motley crew was divided immediately by nationality. Peter and Vince ended up in the same room. It's hard to say whether their room was better or worse than the others. Instead of beds, there were mattresses lying on the bare ground. Instead of a table, there was a large blackboard on which flies and other insects that the sailor had only seen in biology textbooks crawled. The hut might have looked like the dwelling of a local poor man if it had not been for the bars. The bars were on both the windows and the doors. Vince glanced warily at the wires that ran along the wall. If their little prison caught fire, they could hardly escape. There was no restroom. Twice a day, the locals came in with machine guns and took them outside. I told you there was no need for heroics, Peter reflected. As you can see, we are not going to be killed. The living conditions are quite tolerable. We just have to be patient. Soon you and I will return to our native countries and we will remember this story with a smile. Good for you, said Vince. You have no wife and no children. You might be able to smile your British smile. I've got people waiting for me at home. Relax, William. It's an insurance claim. You'll get paid a lot of money and you'll tell your kids about being captured by pirates. It's $1 million story. Vince thought to himself that his countrymen didn't get into this kind of trouble very often. When he came back, he'd be interviewed or even made into a movie. But when will that be? His picture is probably already on the news on every federal channel. How much money do these dark-skinned guys need to release him? After 2 days of waiting, a TV was put in their room. Otherwise, they would have just started howling with longing. But all the content is in an unfamiliar language. Not even a single channel in English. It was still more fun to hear other people's speech than to talk to each other endlessly. We're going to lose weight on this food, said Peter, as they were brought their meager rations again. But on the other hand, at least it's something like this. They were fed twice a day. A woman handed them 2 bowls of baked beans through the bars. In principle, Vince had nothing against such a dish. It was good, but if it was all he had to eat, the beans quickly became disgusting. The only thing that kept him going was his partner, who didn't seem to be discouraged. William, Peter said, maybe you could teach me Russian. I'll come out of here a great translator and find myself a new job. Without the bloody sea, the sea after his wife and son, it was the biggest thing Vincent longed for. It was close enough to reach. In the mornings, he breathed the salty air. And if the village was quiet, he could hear the water rippling. He wished he knew where they were and how far they'd gotten from civilization. On the 3rd night, when they turned off the TV and went to bed, he was awakened an hour later. Get up, let's go. You're a job. A contract, said the stranger. Vincent sleepily sent the pirate to hell, but he didn't understand English very well, or pretended to. The dark-skinned man who'd come after him was denser than his countrymen, and his arms were a good relief of muscle. The stranger was smiling, confirming the stereotype that Africans had the whitest teeth on earth. He could use them instead of a flashlight. When they had been brought to the village, they had been blindfolded while still on the schooner. Now at night, one of the kidnappers either didn't care about privacy or hoped that the darkness would keep the village safely hidden. But something could still be seen in the darkness. They were in a large village, and they were walking along a road that was good by local standards. It was here, and there were off-road vehicles, mostly Japanese. Vince knew that in Africa, they valued Toyota and other brands that were easy to repair and reliable for aggressive use. To the left, in the distance, was a dark building. Some signs of the buildings were different. Some small huts in front, but on the second line were quite large houses. Call me Beat. Hurry up and step forward. Beat, said the pumped-up pirate, following close by. You know where you're going, Vincent replied. We heard you were fixing it. We need to fix the boat. Go forward quickly. It's very important. Step, you fix the boat. More out of boredom than any real desire to help, Vince obeyed the black man. He led him to a hangar where a large boat with a disassembled motor stood on a carriage. The mechanic took a flashlight, took a quick look at the machinery, and whistled. Someone must have tried to repair the engine blindfolded, and it was in an absolutely terrible condition. The wiring on the boat also left much to be desired. You could burn yourself out if a miracle happened and the engine started. Can you do it? Beat asked. I doubt it, Vincent replied. He wanted to explain that for such a repair he needed time, desire, and most importantly, parts. But he thought it was a waste of time. Pirates didn't understand English very well. You can do it. Beat nodded. Over there, tools. That's where the gears are. Your brother will be with you all night. He'll help you. I don't want to. Vincent breathed out. Mistake. Beat shook his head and pointed to the gun on his belt. You fix it. I don't shoot. Not you, not my friend. The deal. Sometimes Tina went to her page on the world's most popular social networking site. She'd scroll through the feeds, look at other people's stories of happy families to forget herself. Now and then men tried to get to know her. They wrote something in private messages, called her for coffee with far-reaching consequences. All this verbal garbage she threw away without reading, but the first and last name of one of the men seemed familiar. I think Vincent had told her about him. Besides, the man hadn't asked for coffee, but had written a large message in English. At least one name was immediately apparent: Vincent, only in Peter Long, her husband's partner. She stared at the photo. That was him, and in one photo in the album, it was him and Vince, hugging like cronies. Tina didn't understand English very well. She'd wanted to learn it when she was carrying Mike, but the pregnancy had been too difficult for her so she copied the Brit's words into a Google Translator and tried to grasp the general meaning. She wanted to believe that she had misunderstood her interlocutor, or that he was mistaken, deceiving her. I am a friend of Vincent, your husband, Peter wrote. I had a hard time finding your page. I understand that it's normal for a husband and wife to have different last names, but the fact that his page is missing from your friends is nonsense. Fortunately, my luck has changed. Please reply as William asked me to tell you that he misses his family very much. Is he alive? She wrote, no, yes, the Brit replied. William is alive and well, only complaining about his teeth. The water is disgusting. He missed you very much, remembered every day. We were separated when we were held prisoner for a few days. Why didn't he come back? Tina asked, trying to find the right words. He's working with them, the Brit replied. How's that? Look, Daddy, it's hard to explain, he continued. I just wanted to say that we are praying for him and for you. There is a way we can help financially. Please let me know how we can do that. Thank you, Tina wrote. But what is it like to work with them? Can you explain? Me. I've already told the police everything, Peter replied. I'm afraid it's a job for them. Tina closed the social networking app, unable to bear the bitter truth. Working with them. Then I can see why it's taking him so long to come home. And also why she and her mother-in-law were expected to keep quiet and find out nothing. Her husband's a pirate. Her husband hijacks other people's ships. It just didn't make sense. Tina didn't bother to tell her mother-in-law anything. She could see the uncertainty hitting the woman. She had always seemed younger than her years, and now she had aged dramatically. Let someone else tell her such news. Now, in order not to lose the apartment, it was necessary to act. Tanya's soul was filled with contradictory feelings. On the one hand, she loved Vince, the father of her child, so cheerful and optimistic. He was a real energy, a nuclear reactor that never shut down. His confessions were so naive, but so sincere. No one knows his fate, but she wanted to believe that he would get out of it, that he would make it. On the other hand, she was so young, maybe her husband will come back. Not now, but in 2 years, 5 years, or 10? Tina tried to understand herself. If Vince, God forbid, were suddenly in prison, would she wait for him? She would, but not forever. But prison is one thing, captivity is another. Of course, he works for African criminals, not of his own free will. That's even worse. When there's a trial and a sentence, you can know exactly when the sentence is over, when the person is going to go back to freedom. They had taken criminal law in law school, so Tina knew that you could only be in prison for a very long time if you did something truly horrible. But prison was like incarceration without a sentence. All the more frustrating because Vince had done nothing wrong, betrayed no one, or done anything wrong. It must be that all these big men just don't know how to negotiate. The pirates let go whoever they paid for or put in a good word. And her husband was too easy a man, too convenient and suave to lay down his bones for him. What would Vince say if she decided not to wait for him? Would he let her continue to make her own destiny and even find Mike another father? Or would he have gotten angry, yelling and cursing? She knew her husband well, even perfectly, but she could not predict his behavior at such a difficult fork in the road. The atmosphere in the apartment was electrifying. Both Tina and Fiona tried to spend as little time together as possible, and both felt shame, but for different reasons. That feeling faded, though, when they had to get back to the important issues on which the future depended. Not just theirs, but Mike's. "So you're with them too?" my mother-in-law questioned. "And you want my Vince to be declared dead while he's still alive?" They put Mike in the living room to watch cartoons while they argued in the kitchen. Fiona couldn't accept the reality of her old age. She'd never been to court in her entire life. She'd never been taken to the police. It seemed to her something shameful, disgusting, reprehensible. "We'll just buy time," Tina persuaded her. Let's say he's declared dead. It could be overturned if Vince came back. Otherwise, we'll be evicted." "Let them try." "F," Fiona replied defiantly. "AEI," Huron replied defiantly. "Mike and I have places to go." Her daughter-in-law continued. "We're going to my mom's in New York." "What about you?" "No one's going to evict me, daughter," Fiona said, but she sounded less sure. "You can't evict a man if he has nowhere else to go. I'm a pensioner, an invalid, almost an honored man." Here, of course, Fiona was lying. Although she went to the doctors regularly, her health was excellent for her age. There was no way that argument was going to hold up. Besides, she knew how hard it was to get disability, even if you were really unwell. But she believed that the court was a place that would help, not evict. Especially if she just didn't have another place to live. "That's not an option," Tina said. I'm a lawyer. Our apartment is mortgaged, so even Mike won't be spared. The law is the law. It can't be." "Well, Fiona, why are you arguing?" The young woman waved her hands. "Would I tell you this if I didn't know for sure? Will they kick me out?" Fiona said in disbelief. "They'll evict you before you know it," continued the daughter-in-law. "I won't fight to the death for this apartment. I feel sorry for her, of course, but health is more expensive." Tina had already decided for herself that she would not humiliate herself and argue with the bailiffs. If they suddenly evict her, she'll pack her things and leave. All the more, her mom is waiting. But it was worth fighting the system, especially since she saw one way to win, and she didn't want to go back to New York. It's cold and it rains all the time. She liked living by the sea. She'd gotten used to it over the years, and she couldn't imagine herself anywhere else. On the one hand, everyone in this town knows about her personal tragedy, that her husband disappeared or became a pirate. Out there, in the big city, she could just get lost. Here, everyone knows everyone, knows to leave and be done with it. And this cheerful old woman, if she wants to fight to the death, she can. At least, she didn't go to NDI. It turns out he doesn't broadcast anymore. "I don't agree," Fiona said. "I'm not signing up for anything. Vince is alive, I can feel it. And he'll be back," Tina sighed. She had already prepared a statement asking for her husband to be declared dead. As her fingers raced across the keyboard, tears rolled down her cheeks. But there was no other choice. This way, at least she could stall for time, to get at least some payments for the child. For the loss of the breadwinner. "If you're not going to leave, at least clean more often," Tina said. I do all the cooking and cleaning, and the windows could use some cleaning." "Look how you're bossing me around." "You're not the boss," Fiona said angrily. "This is my son's apartment." "What if he's..." Tina sighed. The words were hard to say. "What if he's no longer alive?" "You wish," Fiona said. You can't wait for him to die. But even if he is gone, part of it belongs to me. I know my rights well." "You're wrong," said Tina. Vincent wrote a will. "A will?" Fiona's eyes widened. Yes, her daughter-in-law nodded. "I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want you to think I was trying to get this apartment on purpose." She wanted to say more harsh words, but Fiona suddenly sank back into her room. Fiona knew that in her favorite soap operas at such moments, the heroes usually fainted and an ambulance rushed to them. She, on the other hand, felt fine, despite her worries. Only her soul hurt, but modern medicine doesn't know how to treat that. "William, where have you been?" Peter asked. "I was worried," Vince grinned. So worried, in fact, that he'd been sleeping like a marmot when the pirate had taken him out at night. By morning, the mechanic had managed to revive the engine at great cost, but of course it wouldn't last long. "I don't care. Let these pirates go out to sea and stall. This is the second time I've been kidnapped," Vincent explained. "I was up all night resurrecting a half-dead boat. Black magic," Peter laughed. He was glad that the dude was still optimistic, no matter what. But the fact that his colleague had agreed to help the pirates was alarming. Unless William is a grown man and knows what to do himself. Our Chinese friends are on the loose, said Peter. The woman who brings us the slop called food explained it to me in broken English sign language. Good for them, said Vince. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed. Sure, Peter nodded. I'll turn the TV down. Just kidding, I'll turn it all the way down, man. That was the last time Vincent saw his British colleague. After lunch, two skinny black guys with smiles that could compete with the lights came to pick him up. These knew no English at all and gestured to the mechanic where to go. He responded with another gesture, an international gesture, but had to comply. The African village is filled with stuffy and scorching air. Here and there were locals going about their business. Women were washing and peeling vegetables, children were playing and running around, men were lounging on large sun beds under umbrellas and drinking drinks from bottles. Clay-clad huts were neighbored by tall brick houses. No fences, all doors open. Palm trees overhung them. Vincent and his escorts reached the edge of the village. There, far away from the other houses, stood a villa that looked like a medieval castle. There was a fence around it, and a few other guys with machine guns, all of them with serious frowns on their faces. We went inside. After the heat outside, the air conditioning seemed like bliss. Let's be clear, said a swarthy man in plain English, sitting on a high leather armchair as if on a throne. They won't pay for you. What do you mean? Benson wondered. Who are you? I don't understand anything. You don't need to understand, replied the local king. I don't have time to explain. Nobody needs you, and you're not getting paid. But the boys said you've already helped us twice. Vincent didn't say a word. He didn't like the atmosphere or the conversation. One thing he was glad about was the air conditioning, which kept the room at a comfortable temperature. There was a table in front of the czar with fruit, cheese, and sweets. Vince stared at the food and swallowed saliva. The pirate followed his gaze and smiled. Eat something, keep your mouth busy, he said. The Chinese were bought at once. The British are being dealt with. But with you, sailor, there's a problem. What kind of trouble? Vince was surprised. I'm Russian. The Africans love us. We've helped everyone here so many times. Not everyone loves us, the pirate boss corrected him. It's business, you know. I'm wasting my time explaining things to you. Oh, I didn't ask to be kidnapped, Vincent said. I'm a mechanic. I don't decide anything. We can only keep you and feed you if you work for us, the king said and leaned toward him. You must earn your bread and your life. And if I don't? Vincent asked, filling his mouth with cheese and grapes. How he longed for a proper meal. Even the pirate's threats had less effect on him when his stomach was full. Let's throw it into the sea. The king yawned. Let the sharks sort it out. Vince knew there were sharks here because the waters were very warm. He was also willing to believe that they'd refuse to pay for him as quickly as they'd refused to pay for the other crewmen. He'd heard of something like that before. It's just that when these stories are told over a beer, it's one thing. A huge, dark-skinned man making death threats for refusing to work is another. I got a family back home, Vince said. You'll work for me for a while. Buy yourself out, the kingpin explained. And then you'll leave. A contract. The will was Vince's idea, from start to finish. Tina didn't understand why he thought of such things at such a young age. But it would solve everything now. Relations with her mother-in-law were already strained to the breaking point. Sell the apartment, pay off the bank, and part like ships at sea. The only thing that made them hold back was Mike, who didn't want to get involved in adult problems. Tina caught herself thinking that she had already accepted the idea that she would have to leave the apartment, one way or another. Before, the feeling that she was the owner of the place gave her strength and energy. She used to scrub the floors and furniture tirelessly, cleaning almost every day, constantly decorating the place, buying new furniture. Now she was too lazy, even to dust the cupboards. Mom, let's clean. BAM, said Mike, holding his toy mop. He liked order. He remembered where and what toy he put where he left the car, and when Mommy scrubbed the floors or vacuumed, he'd come right over to help. To keep him interested in cleaning, he and Vince even bought him a toy mop. They're the happiest kids in the history of mankind. Not today, Mike, Tina said. Go play with the cars. I'm busy. What are you doing? My son asked. Working the woman's side. Tina was preparing for the trial. Both her and her mother-in-law would be summoned to the hearing. They would ask questions. They must have already requested information from the police, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She attached to the application a letter that had recently come from her employer. Most likely her husband will be declared missing. Then she will be able to get a delay from the bank, a credit vacation, or she would finally get help from the administration, not in word but in deed. "Mom, when is Dad coming?" Mike asked me. "I don't know," Tina answered honestly. "Does Grandma know?" He continued. "Who knows? You can't explain to such a small child that Daddy was in trouble somewhere far away, and that now the details of his fate, a real mystery. When he's older, she'll explain everything. He'd understand everything. He would." Vincent found himself in a huge port city that looked like a junkyard. Ships were everywhere, on the dock, at the dock, or just washed ashore. He didn't even know roughly where they were. The Pirate King was traveling in a yacht, a beautiful one, but not the most luxurious Vincent had seen in his seafaring life. He was put under lock and key, and when he asked for the captain's bridge, one of the guards took up a pistol. "Big Boss forbid it," he said sternly. You sit down. I don't shoot." It took the yacht 2 days to reach the port city. Her engine was inspected. It ran smoothly, beautifully like clockwork. And since Vince's services weren't in demand, he wasn't treated very well. He was fed only twice, and it looked like leftovers from the boss's table, but there wasn't much to choose from. Now the fact that he hadn't had time to say goodbye to Peter added to the sailor's list of pains. He had gone to meet his fate lightly in the clothes he had been captured in. In the harbor, though, things had gotten a little more comfortable. He was put on a huge repair dock where work was going on day and night. He was given overalls, underwear, flip-flops. Instead of a cabin, a container with 2 bunk beds. It was closely adjacent to the repair area. You could not go anywhere. The first 3 days were no different from his usual work. One was responsible for setting up the electronics, and the other did the hard physical labor of operating a gantry crane. The foreman, that's what he called himself, was obviously a free man. Most of the time he sat in a room on the mezzanine, locked up, and watched his team through the glass. He was only allowed to talk to him on business. To place an order for parts or tools, you had to ring the bell and wait for the master's indulgence. Vince would have loved to talk to the other 2 mechanics who worked at the dock, but they either didn't understand his English and Russian or pretended not to. At least once a week, Big Boss came to them to criticize the repair. Not a spoke to them in a different language. Not a single familiar word. And then he'd go to "No, dude," shouted Big Boss in English. "I'm not feeding you so you can rest here. The job has to be done by morning, you understand?" Vincent sighed. He had to fix machinery all the time. He didn't have to sleep. His palms were already black with oil, and his mind was dull. He didn't share the boss's complaints. The mechanic hadn't come across a single mechanism that he couldn't bring back to life, and the piracy's equipment was disgusting. Everything was outdated, worn out, and if it was serviced, it was by amateurs. Helping was good. In the port city, he could find spare parts instantly. In the morning, the master would take a slip of paper where Vince had written the names of the parts he needed with a dirty hand. By lunchtime, or at the latest in the evening, he had the parts. The repair dock was also a makeshift parts warehouse. Someone had dismantled hundreds of machines and put the parts on the shelves, but they were in such disarray that it was difficult to find the right item. And since Vince saw no white light and the days were similar, he lost track of time. How long had he been a prisoner here? It felt like 3 or 4 months, but in reality, it could have been years. He had asked many times to call, to say a word to Tina or his mother, but the pirates had refused. "Why do you want to leave?" Big Boss asked with genuine bewilderment. "Is it bad for you here, with us?" "Oh, my wife and son are waiting for me at home," answered Vince. "Work some more," the pirate urged. "When you're a free man, we'll find you a new wife. She will bear you not 1, but a dozen sons." Vincent learned that the pirate business was not centered on hijacking ships. On the contrary, his new boss had convinced him that they would be moving away from that line of business. The sailor thought that the Tsar simply had no one to discuss his ambitious plans with. He didn't trust his partners, and he was afraid of other captives. He called Vince's friend every time, which didn't stop him from having regular debriefings. Smuggling is our future, he said. But we need reliable ships. And you, dude, you're too slow at repairing them. Too slow. I'm tired of watching you guys work all day long. So let me go, Vince said. No. You haven't done a tenth of what you owe, Big Boss scolded. But if you do well, you'll not only be a free man, but a rich one. Vincent sighed and went to work. Here, in the African port city, he was completely disenfranchised, and the sea no longer seemed as desirable to him as it once had. It was close by. He was literally standing on it. All he wanted was to return home to his family and never be parted from her again. Tina wrote to Peter, who promised help, but his reply was disappointing. If she could pay off the bank, the huge sum for her must have been small money for a British man. Besides, he knew Vincent's other co-workers. "Oh, we'll pay it all back," Tina wrote. I'm sure we will, Peter replied. But we'll have to think about it. It would take time to raise the money. Time was running out. In a week, the court, where the bank will ask to evict her from the apartment. Yes, she can appeal the decision and ask for a stay of execution, but none of that would solve the problem. It would be a few months, a year at the most, when the leverage would be gone. And Tina knew perfectly well that those who would want to take the apartment do not care about both children and mothers. If only he had somehow gotten in touch, she said. If he'd even let me know, I wouldn't have dared to do it. I would have waited. Don't make excuses. My mother-in-law replied sharply. Do whatever you want, Tina. I'm not going to get down on my knees in front of you. There was only one way left. If the court declared Vincent dead, the eviction proceedings would be suspended, and she'd have time to pay off her debt somehow, or she could pack up and go home to her mother. The night before the hearing, they didn't speak. Mike couldn't understand why the two people closest to him weren't talking. He tried to find something for them to do together, to ask them to play, but to no avail. You didn't have to come, Tina said when she saw her mother-in-law in front of the judge's office. Of course not. Fiona snapped at her. I don't want you saying anything. I'm not going to let them evict us. The eviction case is on hold, Tina sighed. They're going to hear my application today. If you're here, do as I say. But the mother-in-law stuck her nose up proudly and didn't say a word. The secretary checked their data, checked their passports, and told them to go into the hall. Tina felt confident. She had been to court before, but her mother-in-law was obviously uncomfortable. She was asking questions to the secretary, trying to find out something. What about the judge? Fiona asked. Was she angry or not? The secretary smiled and answered something neutral. Of course she is, thought Tina. You should have lived with her for the last year. I'd like to see you smile. They entered the hall, and within a couple of minutes, a judge in a robe took her place at the table. She was a woman of indeterminate age. She could be either 30 or 50. She, too, clarified their details, explained their rights, and got to the heart of the dispute. Or, do you support the application? She asked the women. Yes, Your Honor, Tina replied. Absolutely not. Shouted Fiona. The judge tapped her cue stick and admonished her. Fiona genuinely wondered, what had she done wrong? The woman in the robe shifted some papers and began to ask Tina questions. What does it take to declare Vincent N. dead? Your Honor, we are in a difficult financial situation, Tina replied. Declaring him dead will allow us to receive survivors' benefits. Oh, I see, the judge nodded. Fiona, clarify why you do not support the application. Because Vincent is alive. Who? Answered the pensioner. When was the last time you spoke to him? Or a week ago. Fiona said defiantly. The judge looked at both women expressively. Tina sighed. The most frustrating thing is when the court starts to doubt the veracity of a statement. I'll give it a week, she said. There's a fortune teller by the sea. Tina went to her, not even thinking about the possible queue. At the fortune teller's house, there were mostly newcomers waiting, lazily lounging on benches. The woman counted 6 people and wanted to leave, but suddenly the door to the house opened, and the fortune teller appeared on the threshold. She looked at her clientele for a couple of seconds and pointed her finger at Tina. Me, she said. The fortune teller nodded. Tina walked inside. No one shouted at her back that she had cut in line. Apparently, the laws of ordinary social life did not apply here. Although it was hot and sunny outside, inside in the herbalist's abode, it was dark and cool. There were icons on the walls, which seemed very strange to Tina. Candles burned in the room where the mysterious soothsayer received her clients. All the windows were covered with thick cloth. "What can I tell you, my dear?" he asked the fortune teller, playing cards. After these words, Tina suddenly began to cry. She felt sorry for herself and for Micah and for her mother-in-law, who was completely exhausted because of the disappearance of her beloved son. The fortune teller sighed, but waited patiently for her guest to pull herself together. "So what happened, sweetheart?" She repeated. "My husband," Tina began. "My husband was stolen." "It happens," the fortune teller shrugged. "Do you want me to do the reversal?" "No, he was stolen by men," Tina said. They stole it, you know." "I understand everything," the woman said. "I've been looking at people like you for years. I've been looking and looking and looking, noticing everything." "What do you want, Tina hesitated. If the need brought her here, to the house of the most sought-after fortune teller by the sea, she should ask for something understandable, something that could be checked later. After the tears she'd shed, she suddenly felt funny. Maybe the fortune teller could give her the number of a lucky lottery ticket. "Tell me," Tina said after a pause. "Tell me, is he alive?" The healer sighed and began to shuffle her deck. She laid the cards on the table, and the visitor looked at the images. She saw some man, knives and all. She wondered how she, a woman with a college degree, had decided to ask for help from some "He's alive," the fortune teller answered. "He is languishing inside a cage, either prison or captivity, either a choice or a share." "Is he well?" Tina asked. She suddenly realized what interested her most. The future, whether Vincent would come back to her, and then she could be patient, or he would be lost in a foreign land, and then any action she took would be justified. "Oh," the fortune teller sighed. "Your husband is healthy, but not quite. He will live, but not as people do. He was sick, but he survived. Will he come back to me?" Tina was finally able to ask the question that worried her the most. "Yeah, Vince is strong, that's for sure. Even if he were in trouble, weak and feeble, he wouldn't give up. He'd stay with her, cheer her up, and laugh at his own problems. But if he had been near her, and so, in a foreign land, it was unknown whether he would return on principle." The fortune teller suddenly put the cards away and turned on the light. Tina saw her office, not very presentable. There was trash in the corners, candy bar and chip packets, empty bottles. "What does your heart tell you?" the fortune teller asked. Tina thought again. Her heart seemed to be silent, that she hasn't asked it anything worthwhile in a long time, just living her life as if she were riding the rails. The son, the mother-in-law, the mortgage in the bank, they're all kind of there, but they all pass over the surface. Is Vince coming back or not? That's when Tina realized she was waiting for him and still loving him. "He's right there," she answered. "Then go," the fortune teller said. "Go and don't scare away my clientele. I can see that you are in trouble, real trouble. How can I help you? I did what I could. I did everything, and what I didn't do, I couldn't. And don't ask questions to the cards. Do you understand me?" That morning, for some reason, the master and the two wordless workers were kicked off the docks. Vince was alone, except for the spy with the gun, but he didn't enter the dock. An hour later, Big Boss came in. He seemed kinder than usual today. He didn't even yell at his slave or try to speed him up. "No, look, my beauty," said the pirate. The gates opened. Big Boss's yacht entered the repair dock carefully, very slowly. The black-skinned man put the vessel on its keel and brushed the sweat from his forehead. He bowed to the head pirate and jumped onto the bridge. The boss clapped his sidekick on the shoulder, approvingly. "Keep it up. We need to check the technical part. Be as careful as with a woman," Big Boss told him. "I won't trust my boat to anyone but you. No one will disturb you. Albert will watch and help you." "A contract?" "Give me the phone," the sailor asked. "I need to call my wife. The connection doesn't work here," the boss said without blinking an eye. To make a call, you have to go out to sea. Behave well, and tomorrow we will go out together on my beauty. You'll call, I give you my word." The gates of the repair dock closed. Vincent was dead tired of waiting, of being away from his family, of working all the time. He decided it was time to take his fate into his own hands. If only Peter hadn't been so skeptical on the ship, they could have fought off the pirates and thrown them into the sea. Vincent was determined that he could handle one course. "I'm on it," the mechanic replied and smiled. Big Boss took that as a sign of favor and clapped him on the shoulder as he had Albert. "You guys are gold," said the pirate. "You take a good look at the ship and tell me personally what needs to be repaired and what needs to be replaced. And don't discuss what you see with the master. I don't trust him." Together with Albert, Vincent went into the yacht and went down into the engine room. The boat was in excellent condition. It was obvious that the machinery had been serviced by specialists. Only minimal work was required to keep the yacht in the sun. But Vincent, for almost the first time in his life, decided to cheat. "Oh, what a nightmare," he said to Albert in English. He understood, but not well. "What happened?" he asked. The guileless pirate's face was immediately contorted with fear. He was more worried about the condition of the boat than he was about his own life. "Look," Vince said, poking at the switch box. "This thing could catch fire at any moment. Look how hot it's getting. We need to change something right away." "Where to?" Albert was surprised. His hand involuntarily went to the holster on his belt. Big Boss didn't say to touch anything, just to see. "Relax." The sailor hastened to reassure him. "There's plenty of parts. We'll pick the right one and move it around. And if this thing catches fire, do you know what your boss will do to you?" Albert found the argument convincing. He went upstairs with the Russian slave and was about to jump to the bridge, but he stopped. The pirate looked at Vincent and gestured forward with an obliging gesture and smiled. "After you," he said. The sailor took one broad step over the obstacle and walked toward the warehouse. As he walked, he considered what to do with Albert. He couldn't raise a hand against the man, much less hurt him. Nature had given him a kind, perfectly peaceful nature, but his life depended on it. "Help," he asked Albert, pointing to the top shelf. When the black pirate looked in that direction, Vincent slapped him sharply on the forehead and was surprised at his own quickness. It was a move they'd been taught at the academy, but they'd never practiced it before. It was textbook. Albert staggered. Vince picked him up so he wouldn't hit the ground and put him down, took off his gun holster and knife sheath. Then he thought about it and tied his hands and feet in his trademark nautical knot. Then he tied his mouth shut too. Overcoming fear and overriding his own conscience, Vince patted his prisoner's pockets. His cell phone, he unlocked it. According to the smartphone, the connection was excellent. At first he wanted to look at the time, but then he realized he was in December 11th. He had spent 6 months in captivity. A terrible. Then the mechanic turned on geolocation to see where he was. Whistled. It was 200 nautical knots to a relatively safe place. But if he carefully steps out on the water, turns off the transponder, and moves slowly, he may well get away. It was his only chance. When darkness fell, Vince opened the repair dock gate and started the boat's engine. Big Boss still hadn't shown up. Maybe he was waiting for a call from Albert, or maybe he'd gone out. He was the real king here, so he could have all the advantages. Vince backed up. Slowly, carefully began to pull out of the dock. He put on the small forward gear, picked a direction, and went at minimum speed. The shore was glowing with lights and looked like a harbor town from a distance. Vince was getting farther and farther away, pleased with his luck, adding speed. Why hadn't he realized this before? He knew how to drive a boat like this. It was no more difficult for him than driving a car. And when the yacht had already left the dock at a decent distance, the sailor heard shooting and noise. The voices were clearly directed at him. Vincent turned the engine to maximum and began to pray. Their apartment was unusually quiet that evening. No shouting, no swearing. Tina walked over to her mother-in-law and put her hand on her shoulder. "Or, Softiana," she said, "I'm so guilty, you have no idea." "Oh, what happened?" her mother-in-law asked. She felt a burning sense of shame herself. How quickly their perfect family was gone. "I also feel that he's alive, and that he'll be back soon." Fiona brightened. She had been wrong to doubt her grandson's mother. A good girl, just with a claim. "Faith, oh, Tina," the grandmother replied. "We've made a lot of trouble. So much we've done that we can't even clear it up in a year." "He'll come back," Tina said with conviction. I know. I can feel it." There were so many other things she wanted to say. That she would raise the money to pay off her bank debt. that she would never leave this town where she had known the joy of motherhood, and that their family would be preserved and become a model family. But a phone call brought her out of her thoughts. She looked at the phone, a long, long number, obviously foreign. Could it be that Peter had collected the money and was calling? How on earth was she going to talk to him? Be that as it may, Tina swiped the phone. "Hello," she said. "Me, Tina." Heard a familiar voice. "Tina, it's Vince." "Tina, I'm coming home. Do you hear me?"
Victoria stood next to the high panoramic window and thoughtfully looked into the distance. There, where in the depths of her and her husband's large and flowering garden, there was a small, beautiful lake in which huge rainbow carp slowly swam. "Here, look how handsome they are," he said, hugging her. "Jack, they were bought especially for you, so that you could come here at any time and watch our family in miniature." Jack smiled and pointed out to the young woman a pair of beautiful fish moving smoothly under the glass-smooth water column. "Look, the bigger one is like me," the husband continued. "But this beauty with iridescent sides is you, Victoria, his female, his legal wife. You see how happy they are, just like you and me, Victoria." Then for a long time I looked at the majestic Pisces and thought that she too was now floating in the same way in the middle of the unknown of her own life. And just like these carps, it does not remember itself. Elections allowed Katie. The woman slowly shifted her focus from her gaze to the reflection in the window. Tall, almost model height, slender like a tree trunk. Victoria, she had truly beautiful appearance. The platinum blonde who turned 25 last year looks like she stepped straight out of the pages of a fashion magazine. However, Jackie said that's how they met. Like she was a model who was about to finally leave the business that was boring her, and he was a successful banker who managed several branches of one of the largest banks in the country. The husband told her that they met at some art exhibition, either dedicated to Impressionism or vice versa. It was something related to folk crafts. Jackie told her that he didn't remember exactly. "I would like to remember at least something from all this," I thought to myself with bitterness. However, no matter how much the businessman's wife strained her memory, no matter how much she tried to reconstruct the events of that fateful day when she was in a terrible car accident and almost completely lost her memory, nothing I couldn't remember other than my name. Her first memory, after she finally came to her senses, was the long road home. The woman remembered the cozy interior of an expensive car in which her husband drove her to their luxurious country mansion, located in one of the most closed and carefully guarded cottage communities. Next to her in the car sat a middle-aged woman, dressed in a chic three-piece sky blue suit. Her hair was perfectly styled, and her makeup could have been the envy of the Queen of England herself. The lady looked to be about 50, but she had a figure like that of Hollywood stars. Fit, slender, with a minimum number of wrinkles on a beautiful but slightly cold face. It later turned out that it was the mother, Jack Zoe. The banker's mother owned a large spa complex, so in matters of youth and beauty she really had no equal, at least in their city. After they arrived home, Jack Zoe told her in more detail about what happened to her. "Honey, it's normal that you feel a little lost," her husband explained to her. "The accident you and your driver got into was simply monstrous. The driver died on the spot. And you," Jackie hesitated, as if it was hard for him to talk about it, and he did not know how to choose the right words so as not to shock his already confused wife. "They literally put you back together piece by piece. Your brain was severely damaged, and after doctors performed several complex operations, you had to be put into an artificial coma. Otherwise, you simply wouldn't have survived, my dear." Zoe, who was sitting right there, just silently lowered her eyes and put her palm to her forehead, as if she herself suddenly felt bad from the surge of worries for her daughter-in-law. "You were in a coma for almost 6 months, she said quietly. "My son visited you every day in the hope that your condition would finally improve enough to wake you up. However, at first, the doctors did not give positive prognoses. They said that the chances of making it through were simply scanty, and Victoria, you have conquered death. Well done." When Zoe Konstantinovna looked again at Victoria, there were tears in her eyes. She immediately approached her daughter-in-law and sincerely hugged her. Victoria, there was no choice but to respond to this gesture with a much less tight hug of his own. "I've been waiting for you so much, Victoria," said meanwhile Jack, and he also wiped tears from the corners of his eyes. You just can't imagine how long I've been waiting." Mom says it right. Even the doctors despaired, but I still believed that you would come back to me. Honey, thank God that's what happened. Now you are home, and I will never let you suffer again. Never. The young woman looked at her husband, and for a tiny moment it suddenly seemed to her that she had already heard something like that. But it was under completely different circumstances, in which ones, alas, she did not remember at all. She herself felt as if she had slept for several decades in a row, and when she woke up, she found herself in a completely different time and place than where she had once fallen asleep. The woman was haunted by a constant feeling of lethargy and physical weakness, and everything around her seemed somehow completely different from what it should have been. "Thank you. Thanks to both of you," answered slowly Victoria, and the mother-in-law finally released her from her two strong hands. The young woman smiled faintly and added to her husband, "I must be very lucky to have such a sensitive and caring family. I will try to remember you and everything that happened before this terrible accident. I promise." Zoe, my son, and I quickly looked at each other, but the next second, a happy smile flashed on the face of the husband and mother-in-law. "Of course, darling," the woman sang, taking her hand. "We have no doubt about it. Jack will help you fill in all the gaps that have formed in your memory after the coma. To be honest, we have already prepared a little for this. So once you are completely ready to start, just tell us. Do you live with us?" The mother-in-law was taken aback for a moment, as if she did not expect such tactlessness from her daughter-in-law. But then, realizing that this was just an ordinary question, Zoe softened. "That's right, dear me, and you. Now, Jack, we all live together in this wonderful house. I'll keep an eye on you if you don't mind," she said, looking carefully at her daughter-in-law. "Jack, we are at work all day. In addition, he is often sent on business trips, including abroad. I think it will be better this way." Victoria turned a questioning glance from her to her husband, and he confirmed his mother's words. "Darling, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. I'm taking some time off now, but I will have to go back to the office in a couple of weeks. I want to be absolutely sure that nothing happens to you while I'm not home." Mom kindly agreed to help me with this, although her worries are beyond the roof. "I'm sure you and Mom will have a great time together. Even before the accident, you were inseparable, real girlfriends." Jack laughed a low, pure laugh, while looking at his mother as if he was looking for her support. She didn't keep herself waiting, and so I laughed, too. "Of course, you and I will discuss so many things. We will prepare so many delicious things. You won't be bored with me, that's for sure." Mother-in-law patted softly Victoria on the hand, but it seemed to her that the woman did this too faintly, as if talking about their friendship. The husband nevertheless embellished the true words somewhat so he under attitude one way or another. But then she did not say anything, but only gave her loved ones another weak smile. She is really very tired, and the only thing she really wanted at that moment was just to get some sleep. Related, Victoria did not resist the deservatory and took her to the room designated for her. Almost a year has passed since that moment, but the young woman has not advanced one iota in her numerous attempts to remember life before the moment of the accident. It's as if someone deliberately separated these two halves with an invisible line, and everything that came before was irretrievably lost. Her husband helped her as best he could, showing her a wedding album, which contained many photographs of both the celebration itself and afterwards, from their everyday life. Here they are, happy and incredibly beautiful, posing for a photographer, surrounded by 24 friends. Victoria. She wore a gorgeous designer dress the color of baked milk, completely embroidered with silk and silver crystals that folded into a whimsical and slightly reminiscent of Scandinavian patterns. "You are so beautiful here." Kissing his wife, he whispered to Jack. I just gently dodged. She was not yet ready to get closer to her husband the way he would like. Too little time had passed, and she had not yet had time to get used to him again or feel the feelings that had connected them, as he claimed for 3 long years. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, Victoria. But the husband did not seem to hear this, continuing to try to establish closer communication with his wife. He tried to hug her, but the woman pulled away more insistently. "No, Jack, please. I can't. But I love you." He answered her stupidly, slightly upset Jack, by his face. The woman realized that he had been waiting for this moment for a very long time, and now all he could do was look back at their wedding photos in disappointment. "Okay," he said dryly, "but did you remember anything? And you can't hide from me forever. After all, I am your husband. You don't need to be afraid of me. But maybe if we started living together again as before, you would quickly be able not only to remember, but also to feel for me the same love that I feel for you every day." Victoria, I felt bad at heart. She really wanted all those wonderful, sublime feelings he spoke about to return to her memory. Jack. But looking at the multicolored photographs, she felt absolutely nothing, anyone, even the slightest glimpse of memory about Victoria. She was terribly ashamed, so she could only shake. "That's what I thought," said the husband in much colder tone. "Sometimes it seems to me that you don't even try to remember anything. I understand this is hard for you, but you could just try to trust me and your mom, since your memory still doesn't want to come back to you. Look at your right hand." Victoria obediently stared at her right hand, where her wedding ring with a huge pink diamond was on her ring finger. Jackie caught her glance and nodded curtly. "You see, I gave you this ring on the day I proposed to you. You were happy to receive it. So happy that she immediately told me yes," said Jack. She tried to justify herself, but her husband motioned for her to shut up. "Please let me finish," he said, and a mournful expression instantly spread across his face. "You don't remember now, but you and I have always been part of one whole. We loved each other so much that we even wrote special vows for each other for our wedding." Jackie looked for something in my wife's toilet cabinet and took out a large envelope. Inside was a sheet of coated paper, neatly folded in half. On the sheet of paper was a love letter typed on a typewriter in which Victoria explained her feelings to her future husband. "Here, read this carefully," her husband asked. "If this doesn't bring back even a little memory of how happy we were, then I'm asking, no, I'm begging you, just take my word for it. I love you more than anything in the world, and it will always be that way." With these words, the man left his wife's room, leaving her alone with the wedding vows and his far from rosy thoughts. Victoria read the message to my husband and cried. She cried because she couldn't remember either how she wrote it or what she felt. The oath was truly beautiful. So pure, so sincere. Lord, why? I don't remember any of this. I asked both myself and God the same question. Why can't I love my husband again and remember him? Her mother-in-law's advice didn't help either, although they cooked together in the spacious kitchen and went out into the city together to visit the places that, as she assured her, Zoe loved most of all. It was all useless. Inside Victoriaite was as if there was a huge stone wall that did not allow her to look into the depths of her own memory and remember everything, wherein Victoria she was not left alone for a minute. Either her mother-in-law or herself was always. My husband and I went to the city to unwind a couple of times a week. There they went shopping and to restaurants. Or Jack tried to spend time with his wife visiting theaters, cinema, and exhibitions. She was very grateful to her husband for his work, but did not understand why she could not do everything the same. But on her own, without his presence, Layman wanted a little freedom, personal space. She hoped unsuccessfully that if she could be alone with her thoughts, then her memory might return to her much faster. No, honey, that's impossible. Repeated to her over and over again, Jack. You are still too weak and cannot fully control yourself. What if you get some kind of dizziness? Or, God forbid, will you completely lose consciousness and fall into a coma again? Darling, I won't survive this, you know, but I'll still have to go out in public alone sooner or later. You can't lock me in our house forever. Just thinking about it immediately made me shudder. She suddenly realized that, it turns out, she couldn't stand closed spaces and loneliness. Jackbutt, seeing his wife's reaction to his words, he instantly became nervous with irritation. The corner of his eye even twitched. What's happened? Did you remember something? He asked, somehow strangely. No, she answered. Why are you asking? Ends of the wristband immediately relaxed noticeably and said more softly, I thought you felt something new. Maybe she remembered how you and I already argued in a similar way. Victoria shook her head negatively. Not really. But you're right. I realized that I couldn't be alone for too long. Then something seemed to push the woman from within, and she looked carefully at her husband, Jack, and why during all this time none of my friends ever called me? Do I have no friends? The phone number you gave me. There's no one in the contact list except you and Zoe. What about my parents? Where are they, Jack? There were so many questions that Jack involuntarily began to walk around the room where they were talking. It was just one of those evenings when they were planning to go to the premiere of the Capitals play, which was touring their city. The man noticeably perked up and kept tugging at his cuffs in excitement, pretending to adjust his emerald cufflinks. What is it, dear? I didn't understand, Victoria. Is there something you haven't told me yet, Jack? I will not leave here until I find out the whole truth. Jackie looked nervously at his wife, and in her soul there was an unpleasant feeling. A feeling that they were clearly hiding something from her. It's just that you've chosen the wrong time for this conversation, he finally said, Jack. We're going to the theater now, and you're here about your parents and friends. Let's talk later. I felt a sudden attack of anger and irritation. She stomped her foot hard on the carpet. But I want to know, have pity on me. I've been living in the dark for a year now and don't know who I am or what I am. I didn't ask because I thought it would be too hard for me and because I thought I would remember everything on my own. But nothing works. I don't know what to do next, how to get my memory back. Victoria, she felt herself begin to shake. She was clearly starting to get hysterical. And my husband, fortunately, also understood this. Jack jumped up to Victoria and hugged her tightly, trying to warm her and calm her trembling. It was like a stretched ringing string. She couldn't control her own body. He stroked his wife on. That's what I was talking about. It's too early for you to be alone. I was hoping you could remember bits and pieces of the main thing. Then set her down on the bed and said in a soft but sad voice, Your parents, they died long ago. It was a hiking accident. Your mom and dad were mountain lovers and often kayaked in wild river areas. One day, their boat couldn't withstand one of the rapids and capsized. She looked at her husband with red eyes from tears. Did they drown? He nodded sadly and stroked Victoria on the cheek. The river was very cold, and in those places the current was very strong. Their death was inevitable. I'm sorry, honey, I'm so sorry. Victoria burst into tears and buried her face in her husband's shoulder. Lord, what a nightmare. Oh, how long ago did this happen? A long time ago, honey. You were only 20 then. You told me about it yourself. Jack gently stroked his wife's head and whispered soothing words into her ear. Then he said carefully, As for your friends, I bought you a new phone because your previous one was broken during an accident. There are no other contacts in it, since I didn't want anyone to bother you again during your rehabilitation. Victoria, she calmed down a little and, wiping her tears, said, Exactly. But I didn't even think about it. I'm sorry, Jack. I am very ashamed that I could think badly of you. I really decided that you wanted to hide something from me. The husband just smiled affectionately and suggested, If you want to meet your friends, then so be it. I'll tell them your new number. But just be sure to stay in touch. When I walk, I need to know that you're okay, you know? Nodded. This news made her feel a little lighter. Well, that's nice, the husband said contentedly. You know, I changed my mind about going to the theater today. I think we've had enough emotions for this evening. Let me give you the sedative a doctor prescribed, and then we'll go to bed early. Is that okay? I thought about it and agreed. She really is very emotional about you. The husband assured her that he was not at all offended by his wife's suspicion, like he understands everything. Still, living without a past is such stress. Having given my wife an injection, Jack breathed out a sigh of relief when she fell into a blissful sleep within a few minutes. That evening, he realized for the first time that he was with Victoria. There is still a long way to go before she finally comes to terms with the fact that her true place is in this house and in his, and only his, heart. That same night, Victoria, I saw a very strange dream, which later I could not get out of my head. In that dream, she couldn't understand where exactly she was. Everything around her was engulfed in bright orange flashes, and the woman herself could not breathe normally because of the smoke that had entered her lungs. Glitter and acrid, this smoke enveloped all the objects that the businessman's wife tried to reach in a fruitless attempt to save them from the approaching flame. I felt the ever-increasing heat on my skin, but did not see a way out of the smoky space. Then, as if out of nowhere, two blurry figures appeared in front of her. I couldn't see exactly what they looked like, but I felt that one of them, the taller one, was a man, and the second, very small, clearly belonged to a child. Victoria, I heard a strong male voice ahead of me. Where are you, Victoria? The voice repeated her name over and over again. She didn't try to quickly shout, I'm here, but not a single sound escaped her throat. In desperation, the woman grabbed her own neck and suddenly heard a piercing, childish voice, Mommy. And she began to rush around in the blinding, fiery fog, trying to reach, or at least get closer to those ghostly figures that were calling her. She understood in her soul that she definitely needed to give them a sign that she was here, that she was alive, and that everything was fine with her. However, the blurry silhouettes moved further away the closer I tried to get to them, Victoria. Finally, experiencing a surge of inhuman despair, the woman screamed into the void, watching the figures move away and dissolve in the smoke. "Wait, please don't leave me here." "No, I want to come to you." "Wake up," called her Jack. And at that moment, the woman opened her huge blue eyes. It turned out that she was still lying in her bed, and her husband was sitting next to her, bending over her and forcefully shaking her shoulders so that she would wake up. Anxiety and sadness were clearly visible on the husband's face. "Then, what's wrong with you? What did you see?" The wife, not yet fully awakened from what she had seen, just shook her head and pulled her husband's hands away from her. "Everything is fine, Jack. Nothing. I just had a nightmare." The young woman regained her breath with difficulty and looked tenderly at her husband. "No, don't worry. Give me a couple of minutes. Mate, fine." Victoria, she turned on her other side, trying to cope with the feelings that rushed over her. What she saw in the dream was so vivid and realistic that the woman could not move away from the thought that it could very well be a memory. Just what? And why didn't she see in this strange dream Jack, as if he had nothing to do with it at all? "Are you sure you don't need sedatives? I could get you some pills if you want." Looked at her husband with outright surprise. "Are you serious, honey? Do you want to turn me into a vegetable?" Backensed for a moment, but laughed lightly and threw a pillow at him. "Yes, I was just joking, fool. Of course, I don't mean anything like that." "Well, really, it's just a bad dream. There is no need to take pills every time I feel emotions." Jackie smiled, but somehow not joyfully, as if he felt guilty about something. However, quickly pretending that nothing had happened, he invited his beloved wife to drink coffee together. Even baked cheesecakes for us today before rushing off to work. As long as I have lived, I am always amazed at her amazing ability to combine the talents of a housewife and a businesswoman. God, how embarrassing. Pressing her hands to her face, she said, "Victoria, it was I who had to get up early and prepare everything. Instead, you also have to strain your mother in the kitchen." Jackie just waved his hand, after which he tenderly kissed his wife on the cheek. "You just don't know her as I do. In fact, all this amateur activity with pots has always been a joy for her. Before my father died, she was an ordinary housewife for a long time, raised me, looked after my dad when he came home from work, and then, when her father died of a heart attack, she took the business seriously. Dad left us some inheritance. She used this money to open her first beauty salon." Victoria looked at her husband with sincere interest. This was the first time he had told her so openly about his family. And I was still just a boy then, about 17 years old. At first, I couldn't accept this new form of my mother. And then she clearly explained to me that in this life you need to fight for yours to the end, gnawing it with your teeth but not giving it to anyone. So, I first entered college at the Faculty of Economics and then got a job in a bank. But gradually I became one of the people and met you. Jack hugged with tenderness Victoria, and she allowed herself to be kissed for real. At some point, the woman thought that the dream she had was really just a meaningless nightmare. A couple of hours later, when the husband was already getting ready for work, the phone of Victoria suddenly burst out an insistent third. Looking at the screen, the woman was surprised to find that they were calling her from an unknown number. "Pick up the phone," he advised her, Jack throwing his jacket over his shoulders. "I'm sure you're happy about who's calling you." "Really?" Raised her eyebrows and answered the incoming call. "It's you." An unfamiliar female voice squealed on the phone. "Yes, it's Victoria. And who speaks?" Lehman. There was a second pause at the other end of the line, after which the same thin voice said, offended, "Jack, of course, he said that you have problems with your memory, but so much so." Victoria looked at her husband again with a question. "Who is this?" But he just winked at her and pointed to his watch. "I'm in a hurry," he whispered with one lips. They hanged themselves there. After this, the husband went to work with a satisfied look, leaving Victoria in complete confusion. And she remembered that Zoe should come home in half an hour, check on her and see if everything is okay. So who should she have fun with? Her mother-in-law or the one who was literally tearing her phone to pieces? Like continued to attack Victoria endless questions. "Listen, don't you seriously remember us? It is me, Anne, your best friend. U.S. Jackie said that you can't get close to you while you're being treated. During this time, we were all exhausted. And yesterday, he writes to us and tells us to drag you into the city. No, well, you always had a Mr. Spontaneity. Sorry, of course, for such frankness. Mate. Anne, stop." I tried to pacify my interlocutor. "Do you want to say that you and I were once friends before the accident? I mean, are you my best friend?" confused by the appearance of another person in her life, whom she did not remember at all. She suggested Anne meet in the city center, in the very cafe where they usually like to go with their husband. The woman wanted to talk to this girl and try to remember her. Still, this one also insisted that they had known each other for many years. However, the meeting with my friend was not impressive to Victoria, to say the least, disappointed. Not only did she remember absolutely nothing of the things that this girl told her about, but she also turned out to be an extremely unpleasant girl in her own right. I couldn't believe that I trusted this nasty and envious girl with all my secrets. Yes, she would never share it with such a gossip. While they were sitting in a cafe, she managed to wash the bones of all their mutual friends. And although half of them Victoria I didn't even see her, she was offended that unlike this. Without hesitation, he throws mud at it. Nah, so you're saying that you and I work together in the modeling business? I asked at some point Victoria to interrupt her endless dirty tirade, and paused for a second, as if her internal computer was having a hard time processing this simple question. Finally, an uncertain smile appeared on her face. Yes. And don't you remember our shows in Milan? How we discussed this famous model? She looks so beautiful in all the magazines, but in reality she is fat. I'm still amazed at what these agents saw in her. After all, the natural one was scary. Anne laughed unpleasantly, revealing her big white teeth. She continued thoughtfully, stirring the remains of her milkshake in a tall glass with a straw. Who do I love more, dogs or cats? I asked again. What? Flapping her long, thickly painted eyelashes, her friend stared at her. And what do cats have to do with it? Victoria looked at the girl carefully. But this is such a simple question. You say you've known me almost since school. Then you can't help but know which animals I love more. All best friends answer such questions with ease, especially when some of them have memory problems. What I definitely didn't expect was that then suddenly, out of the blue, he pulls out his mobile phone and starts hysterically writing something to someone in it. What are you doing? I asked her with a smile. She wouldn't be surprised to know she was posting some nasty stuff about her on the internet, but she didn't care at all. She just wanted to understand what was going on here. And she finished fiddling with her smartphone and with a changing grin, obviously intended to depict a smile. So, I was urgently called here for filming. I would be glad to chat with you more, but unlike you, I don't have a rich husband, so I have to work hard. Yes, and quickly jumped up from the table and sent Victoria a kiss. Don't be upset. We'll definitely chat again later, and then, you'll feel better. Kyo, dear, in touch. With these words, the red-haired gossip fled from the cafe like a bright but stupid butterfly. I couldn't get rid of the thought that with this and there was something wrong. Well, it can't be that she chose such a mercantile person as her friend. Besides, she definitely didn't know the answer to her question. And all this fuss with the phone. Yes, she was just looking for an excuse to quickly leave and not continue to dive into slippery topics. But what could this mean? Victoria were at a loss. She had too many questions about her own past, and she had not yet received an answer to any of them. Hearing her own phone vibrate in her purse, the woman immediately picked up the phone. Hello, honey. How are you? I asked Jack, who called her from work. To be honest, not really, his wife admitted to him. I didn't like it at all. What kind of friend is this who has only clothes and gossip on her mind? Is it true? There was tension in the husband's voice. You don't have to communicate with her if you want. I just thought it would be useful for you to be with old acquaintances. You said it yourself. Yes. I remember she hastened to reassure him. It's just that this meeting turned out to be not at all as sincere as I imagined. I'm going home now, Zoe already there. I could cook us all something original for dinner tonight. They chatted a little more about household chores, after which she hung up and walked home. She wanted to take a little walk to be alone with her thoughts and just relax in silence. The weather that day was simply wonderful. Spring was in full swing. Apple trees were blooming everywhere. The flower beds were full of blooming flowers. A sea of floral herbal aromas floated in the air, and Victoria lingered for a couple of minutes in one of the courtyards near the playground. Looking at the little happy children playing in the sandbox, I felt a surge of incredible melancholy. What a pity that Kolya and I don't have our own baby. This is how I could now sit and watch our son or daughter. Maybe my soul would then feel much calmer. The young woman sat down on the bench, watching the children with pleasure. Some of them were swinging happily on the swings, while their mothers looked away with a proud look. Victoria. Here they say, look, envy how happy we are growing. Suddenly, Victoria, she felt her hands and feet suddenly become cold. Something seemed to switch in the young woman's head, and she clearly, as if in reality, saw herself in her arms with the small child. The newborn snored sweetly. His eyes were closed. He slept. At that moment, I was absolutely sure that I was holding my own son in my arms. However, her vision did not end there. The woman felt strong and gentle arms hug her shoulders, turned around to look at the child's father, and it was he, and to her great amazement, she saw in front of her not at all Jack. A tall, broad-shouldered, handsome man with deep dark green eyes and golden hair did not fit with the image of her husband. Jack was a stocky brunette, slender but slightly taller than herself. This same stranger looked like he was a hero from an old fairy tale. She didn't know either the beautiful man or the child she was holding in her arms, but she was sure that both of them had the most direct relation to her. Really, Jack, is there still something she's not telling her? Is it possible that before him Victoria was there another family? But then where are they? What happened to them? Intrigued, Victoria immediately hurried home. She eagerly awaited her husband's return so she could talk to him about her vision. Though seeing how worried she was, she herself became nervous. Having seated her daughter-in-law in the kitchen, she tried to quickly ask her about what happened and how the meeting with her friend went. At that moment, I was by no means in the mood for a sincere conversation with my mother-in-law. Maybe I can help you with something. Looking in Victoria in the eyes, asked the businesswoman. I'm afraid that only Jack. She sighed. I need to talk to him very seriously. A shadow ran across the woman's face, the nature of which was impossible to determine. The young woman referred to the fact that she needed rest, after which she went upstairs to her room. That evening, when Jack came back home, Victoria, she immediately called him over and honestly told him about her sudden memory. After listening to his wife, the businessman was a little confused at first, but quickly pulled himself together. I was amazed at how quickly the reactions on his face changed. In a few moments, she managed to discern surprise, anger, confusion, and then an imperturbable calmness that hid all other feelings underneath. Asaji, darling, listen to me very carefully, the husband began, placing his wife on the bed. What you were talking about is impossible. But why? She looked at him incomprehensibly. Jack, I feel that these people are somehow connected to me very strongly. These emotions, this image, it was so real, so familiar. If there is something that I don't know about myself, you just have to tell me everything. Jackie covered his face with his hands, as if trying to isolate himself from his own feelings. The doctors warned me that such consequences were possible, he said slowly. You've been in a coma for too long, and part of your brain still remains not fully What do you mean, Jack? I asked him again. What is wrong with me? The husband looked at her with sadness, even some guilt. Forgive me, I should have told you about everything earlier. Grace, what are you talking about? Can you explain? The husband carefully took Victoria by the hands. Hallucinations. The doctor said that this is how the consequences of a coma can manifest themselves. Victoria, she couldn't immediately comprehend what her husband was telling her. When it dawned on her, she shook her head negatively. No, Jack, no. The fact of the matter is that it was not a figment of my imagination. I'm sure I saw part of my past, but I can't understand when it was and who these people are to me. Jack looked at his wife with inexpressible regret. Honey, it happens sometimes. Perhaps you experienced a powerful emotional shock when you looked at your children. So your mind tried to deceive you, to pass off wishful thinking as reality. No, she continued to persist. I'm normal. I know for sure that I have seen these people before. Jack, I didn't tell you about my dream, that nightmare. My husband guessed right away. Yes, she nodded. Victoria, it seems to me that I saw the same man and boy there. Only it seemed to be later than the memories on the playground. There's a face here, Jack. It immediately became dark. Victoria, let's not try to find an explanation for your nonsense, of course. I'm not very pleased that you see some strange man in your visions. But as for the child, herself, she jumped out of bed and threw out her hands nervously. Yes, I also wanted to ask why we still don't have children. You just said that the memory could have been triggered by children playing. What did you mean? Instead of answering, the husband slowly rose from the bed, after which he calmly walked to a small cabinet with medicines and took out a syringe with a sedative. Noticing this, she stepped back. No, Jack, I don't want a sedative. Explain to me how those kids and my visions are connected. Jack, what are you doing? The young woman's eyes filled with pure horror as her husband began to advance on her, holding a ready injection in his hand. His face was completely impenetrable. "Emmy, everything is fine. Don't worry. You just need to calm down a little. Look at you, you're shaking all over." And Victoria, she retreated further and further until she finally felt something hard under her back. It was a wall. The young woman's heart filled with panic. She turned around, trying to find a way out. But at that moment, her husband suddenly grabbed her hands, making it impossible to resist. "Jack, please don't. I don't want to. I'm scared." Jackie pulled his wife to him with force, and in one deft movement, stuck a syringe with a sedative into her neck. "Don't be afraid, honey. Don't be afraid. Everything is fine. I will never let you go. Never. We will always be together." Before your eyes, Victoria, everything immediately floated away. The room was instantly filled with fog. When Jackie unclenched his embrace and carefully laid her on the bed, the woman looked at him with a completely blank look. "Nani, we don't have children because you're barren," the husband said, unexpectedly affectionately. "I didn't want to talk about it so as not to traumatize your already fragile psyche. However, now I see that we cannot do without it. I'll have to call you a psychotherapist tomorrow. He will prescribe you a new course of medications, and you will definitely improve everything." She didn't know what kind of drug her husband was injecting her with, but she was sure that it was definitely not a sedative, more like tranquilizers. Suddenly it flashed through the woman's head, somewhere on the farthest border of her consciousness between sleep and reality. "We also gave these to horses on our farm." Victoria, she didn't have time to grasp onto this thought, because everything around her suddenly plunged into darkness. She woke up only the next morning. Jackie wasn't nearby, so I carefully slipped into the shower to wash away the remnants of sleep in a semi-conscious state caused by strange medications. Lord, didn't I really dream all this? I thought Victoria standing in front of powerful jets of hot water. Did I really remember something that Collier didn't like, and that's why he did this to me? The woman shuddered with disgust. I remembered the terrible expression that flashed on my face Jack the moment he gave her the injection. God, he looked like he was crazy. I can't stay in this house next to him anymore. I need answers. Slipping out of the bathroom, Victoria, I got dressed and carefully went down to the first floor. The woman heard people quietly talking about something in the lick. Victoria stood next to the high panoramic window and thoughtfully looked into the distance. There, where in the depths of her and her husband's large and flowering garden, there was a small, beautiful lake in which huge rainbow carp slowly swam. "Here, look how handsome they are," he said, hugging her. "Jack, they were bought especially for you, so that you could come here at any time and watch our family in miniature." Jack smiled and pointed out to the young woman a pair of beautiful fish moving smoothly under the glass-smooth water column. "Look, the bigger ones like me," the husband continued. "But this beauty with iridescent sides is you, Victoria, his female, his legal wife. You see how happy they are, just like you and me, Victoria." Then for a long time I looked at the majestic Pisces and thought that she too was now floating in the same way, in the middle of the unknown of her own life. And just like these carps, it does not remember itself. Legend as Wadiam slowly shifted her focus from her gaze to the reflection in the window. Tall, almost model height, slender like a tree trunk, Victoria, she had truly beautiful appearance. The platinum blonde, who turned 25 last year, looks like she stepped straight out of the pages of a fashion magazine. However, Jackie said that's how they met, like she was a model who was about to finally leave the business that was boring her, and he was a successful banker who managed several branches of one of the largest banks in the country. The husband told her that they met at some art exhibition, either dedicated to Impressionism or vice versa. It was something related to folk crafts. Jackie told her that he didn't remember exactly. I would like to remember at least something from all this, I thought to myself with bitterness. However, no matter how much the businessman's wife strained her memory, no matter how much she tried to reconstruct the events of that fateful day when she was in a terrible car accident and almost completely lost her memory, nothing I couldn't remember other than my name. Her first memory, after she finally came to her senses, was the long road home. The woman remembered the cozy interior of an expensive car in which her husband drove her to their luxurious country mansion, located in one of the most closed and carefully guarded cottage communities. Next to her in the car sat a middle-aged woman dressed in a chic three-piece sky blue suit. Her hair was perfectly styled, and her makeup could have been the envy of the Queen of England herself. The lady looked to be about 50, but she had a figure like that of Hollywood stars. fit, slender, with a minimum number of wrinkles on a beautiful but slightly cold face. It later turned out that it was the mother Jack Zoe. The banker's mother owned a large spa complex, so in matters of youth and beauty, she really had no equal, at least in their city. After they arrived home, Jack Zoe told her in more detail about what happened to her. "Honey, it's normal that you feel a little lost," her husband explained to her. "The accident you and your driver got into was simply monstrous. The driver died on the spot, and you..." Jackie hesitated, as if it was hard for him to talk about it, and he did not know how to choose the right words so as not to shock his already confused wife. Finally, he said, "They literally put you back together piece by piece. Your brain was severely damaged, and after doctors performed several complex operations, you had to be put into an artificial. Otherwise, you simply wouldn't have survived, my dear." Zoe, who was sitting right there, just silently lowered her eyes and put her palm to her forehead, as if she herself suddenly felt bad from the surge of worries for her daughter-in-law. "You were in a coma for almost 6 months. She said quietly, "My son visited you every day in the hope that your condition would finally improve enough to wake you up. However, at first, doctors did not give positive prognoses. They said that the chances of making it through were simply scanty. And you could, Victoria, you have conquered death. Well done." When Zoe Konstantinovna looked again at Victoria, there were tears in her eyes. She immediately approached her daughter-in-law and sincerely hugged her. Victoria, there was no choice but to respond to this gesture with a much less tight hug of his own. "I've been waiting for you so much," Victoria said, meanwhile, Jack. And he also wiped tears from the corners of his eyes. "You just can't imagine how long I've been waiting. Mom says it right. Even the doctors despaired. But I still believed that you would come back to me. Honey, thank God that's what happened. Now you are home and I will never let you suffer again." The young woman looked at her husband, and for a tiny moment, it suddenly seemed to her that she had already heard something like that. But it was under completely different circumstances, and which ones, alas, she did not remember at all. She herself felt as if she had slept for several decades in a row, and when she woke up, she found herself in a completely different time and place than where she had once fallen asleep. The woman was haunted by a constant feeling of lethargy and physical weakness, and everything around her seemed somehow completely different from what it should have been. "Thank you. Thanks to both of you," he answered slowly, Victoria, and the mother-in-law finally released her from her two strong hands. The young woman smiled faintly and added to her husband, "I must be very lucky to have such a sensitive and caring family. I will try to remember you, and everything that happened before this terrible accident. I promise." Zoe, my son, and I quickly looked at each other, but the next second, a happy smile flashed on the face of the husband and mother-in-law. "Of course, darling," the woman sang, taking her hand. "We have no doubt about it. Jack will help you fill in all the gaps that have formed in your memory after the coma. To be honest, we have already prepared a little for this. So, once you are completely ready to start, just tell us, do you live with us?" The mother-in-law was taken aback for a moment, as if she did not expect such tactlessness from her daughter-in-law. But then, realizing that this was just an ordinary question, Zoe softened. "That's right, dear me, and you and our Jack, we all live together in this wonderful house. I'll keep an eye on you if you don't mind," she said, looking carefully at her daughter-in-law. "Jack, we are at work all day. In addition, he is often sent on business trips, including abroad. I think it will be better this way." Victoria turned a questioning glance from her to her husband, and he confirmed his mother's words. "Darling, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. I'm taking some time off now, but I'll have to go back to the office in a couple of weeks. I want to be absolutely sure that nothing happens to you while I'm not home." Mom kindly agreed to help me with this, although her worries are beyond the roof. "I'm sure you and Mom will have a great time together. Even before the accident, you were inseparable, real girlfriends." Jack laughed a low, pure laugh while looking at his mother as if he was looking for her support. She didn't keep herself waiting, and Zoe I laughed too. "Of course, you and I will discuss so many things. We will prepare so many delicious things. You won't be bored with me, that's for sure." Mother-in-law patted softly Victoria on the hand, but it seemed to her that the woman did this too feignedly, as if talking about their friendship. The husband nevertheless embellished the true words somewhat so in her attitude one way or another. But then she did not say anything, but only gave her loved ones another weak smile. She is really very tired, and the only thing she really wanted at that moment was just to get some sleep. Related Victoria did not resist the Desiree Victoria and took her to the room designated for her. Almost a year has passed since that moment, but the young woman has not advanced one iota in her numerous attempts to remember life before the moment of the accident. It's as if someone deliberately separated these two halves with an invisible line, and everything that came before was irretrievably lost. Her husband helped her as best he could, showing her a wedding album, which contained many photographs of both the celebration itself and afterwards from their everyday life. Here they are, happy and incredibly beautiful, posing for a photographer surrounded by 24 friends. Victoria. She wore a gorgeous designer dress the color of baked milk, completely embroidered with silk and silver crystals that folded into a whimsical and slightly reminiscent of Scandinavian patterns. "You are so beautiful here." Kissing his wife, he whispered Jack. I just gently dodged. She was not yet ready to get closer to her husband the way he would like. Too little time had passed, and she had not yet had time to get used to him again or feel the feelings that had connected them, as he claimed, for 3 long years. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, Victoria, but the husband did not seem to hear this, continuing to try to establish closer communication with his wife. He tried to hug her, but the woman pulled away more insistently. "No, Jack, please, I can't, but I love you," he answered her stupidly, slightly upset Jack by his face. The woman realized that he had been waiting for this moment for a very long time, and now all he could do was look back at their wedding photos in disappointment. "Okay," he said dryly, "but did you remember anything? And you can't hide from me forever. After all, I'm your husband. You don't need to be afraid of me. Maybe if we started living together again, as before, you would quickly be able not only to remember, but also to feel for me the same love that I feel for you every day." Victoria felt bad at heart. She really wanted all those wonderful, sublime feelings he spoke about to return to her memory, Jack. But looking at the multicolored photographs, she felt absolutely nothing. Anyone, even the slightest glimpse of memory, by Victoria, she was terribly ashamed. "That's what I thought," said the husband in a much colder tone. "Sometimes it seems to me that you don't even try to remember anything. I understand this is hard for you, but you could just try to trust me in your mom, since your memory still doesn't want to come back to you. Look at your right hand." Victoria obediently stared at her right hand, where her wedding ring with a huge pink diamond was on her ring finger. Jackie caught her glance and nodded curtly. "You see, I gave you this ring on the day I proposed to you. You were happy to receive it. So happy that she immediately told me yes." "Jack?" She tried to justify herself, but her husband motioned for her to shut up. "Please let me finish," he said, and a mournful expression instantly spread across his face. "You don't remember now, but you and I have always been part of one whole. We loved each other so much that we even wrote special vows for each other for our wedding." Jackie looked for something in my wife's toilet cabinet and took out a large envelope. Inside was a sheet of coated paper neatly folded in half. On the sheet of paper was a love letter typed on a typewriter, in which Victoria explained her feelings to her future husband. "Here, read this carefully," her husband asked. "If this doesn't bring back even a little memory of how happy we were, then I'm begging you, just take my word for it. I love you more than anything in the world, and it will always be that way." With these words, the man left his wife's room, leaving her alone with the wedding vows and his far from rosy thoughts. I read the message to my husband and cried. She cried because she couldn't remember either how she wrote it or what she felt. The oath was truly beautiful. So pure, so sincere. Lord, why? I don't remember any of this. I asked both myself and God the same question. Why can't I love my husband again and remember him? Her mother-in-law's advice didn't help either, although they cooked together in the spacious kitchen and went out into the city together to visit the places that, as she assured her, Zoe loved most of all. It was all useless. Inside of Victoria, it was as if there was a huge stone wall that did not allow her to look into the depths of her own memory and remember everything. Where in Victoria, she was not left alone for a minute. Either her mother-in-law or herself was. My husband and I went to the city to unwind a couple of times a week. There, they went shopping and to restaurants. Or Jack tried to spend time with his wife, visiting theaters, cinema, and exhibitions. She was very grateful to her husband for his work, but did not understand why she could not do everything the same, but on her own, without his presence. The woman wanted a little freedom, personal space. She hoped unsuccessfully that if she could be alone with her thoughts, then her memory might return to her much faster. No, honey, that's impossible. Repeated to her over and over again, Jack. You are still too weak and cannot fully control yourself. What if you get some kind of dizziness? Or, God forbid, will you completely lose consciousness and fall into a coma again? Darling, I won't survive this. You know, but I'll still have to go out in public alone sooner or later. You can't lock me in our house forever. Just thinking about it immediately made me shudder. She suddenly realized that, it turns out, she couldn't stand closed spaces and loneliness. Jack, but seeing his wife's reaction to his words, he instantly became nervous with irritation. In the corner of his eye even twitched. What's happened? Did you remember something? He asked somehow strangely. No, she answered. Why are you asking? Elstbend immediately relaxed noticeably and said more softly. I thought you felt something new. Maybe she remembered how you and I already argued in a similar way. Victoria shook her head negatively. Not really, but you're right. I realized that I couldn't be alone for too long. Then something seemed to push the woman from within, and she looked carefully at her husband, Jack, and why during all this time none of my friends ever called me? Do I have no friends? The phone number you gave me, there is no one in the contact list except you and Zoe. What about my parents? Where are they, Jack? There were so many questions that Jack involuntarily began to walk around the room where they were talking. It was just one of those evenings when they were planning to go to the premiere of the Capitals play, which was touring their city. The man noticeably perked up and kept tugging at his cuffs in excitement, pretending to adjust his emerald cufflinks. What is it, dear? I didn't understand, Victoria. Is there something you haven't told me yet? Jack, I will not leave here until I find out the whole truth. Jackie looked nervously at his wife, and in her soul there was an unpleasant feeling, a feeling that they were clearly hiding something from her. It's just that you've chosen the wrong time for this conversation, he finally said. Jack, we're going to the theater now, and you're here about your parents and friends. Let's talk later. I felt a sudden attack of anger and irritation. She stomped her foot hard on the carpet. But I want to know, have pity on me. I've been living in the dark for a year now and don't know who I am or what I am. I didn't ask because I thought it would be too hard for me and because I thought I would remember everything on my own. But nothing works. I don't know what to do next, how to get my memory back. Victoria, she felt herself begin to shake. She was clearly starting to get hysterical. And my husband, fortunately, also understood this. Jack jumped up to Victoria and hugged her tightly, trying to warm her and calm her trembling. It was like a stretched ringing string. She couldn't control her own body. He stroked his wife. That's what I was talking about. It's too early for you to be alone. I was hoping you could remember bits and pieces of the main thing. Then sat her down on the bed and said in a soft but sad voice, Your parents, they died long ago. It was a hiking accident. Your mom and dad were mountain lovers and often kayaked in wild river areas. One day their boat couldn't withstand one of the rapids and capsized. She looked at her husband with red eyes from tears. Did they drown? He nodded sadly and stroked Victoria on the cheek. The river was very cold, and in those places the current was very strong. Their death was inevitable. I'm sorry, honey, I'm so sorry. Victoria burst into tears and buried her face in her husband's shoulder. Lord, what a nightmare. Oh, how long ago did this happen? Oh, a long time ago, honey. You were only 20 then. You told me about it yourself. Jack gently stroked his wife's head and whispered soothing words into her ear. Then he said carefully, As for your friends, I bought you a new phone because your previous one was broken during an accident. There are no other contacts in it since I didn't want anyone to bother you again during your rehabilitation. Victoria, she calmed down a little and, wiping her tears, Exactly. But I didn't even think about it. I'm sorry, Jack. I am very ashamed that I could think badly of you. I really decided that you wanted to hide something from me. The husband just smiled affectionately and suggested, If you want to meet your friends, then so be it. I'll tell them your new number. But just be sure to stay in touch. When I walk, I need to know that you're okay, you know? Nodded. This news made her feel a little lighter. Well, that's nice, the husband said contentedly. You know, I changed my mind about going to the theater today. I think we've had enough emotions for this evening. Let me give you the sedative a doctor prescribed, and then we'll go to bed early. Is that okay? I thought about it and agreed. She really is very emotional about you. The husband assured her that he was not at all offended by his wife's suspicion, like he understands everything. Still, living without a past is such stress. Having given my wife an injection, Jack breathed out a sigh of relief when she fell into a blissful sleep within a few minutes. That evening, he realized for the first time that he was with Victoria. There is still a long way to go before she finally comes to terms with the fact that her true place is in this house and in his, and only his, heart. That same night, Victoria saw a very strange dream, which later I could not get out of my head. In that dream, she couldn't understand where exactly she was, since everything around her was engulfed in bright orange flashes, and the woman herself could not breathe, normally because of the smoke that had entered her lungs. Better and acrid. This smoke enveloped all the objects that the businessman's wife tried to reach in a fruitless attempt to save them from the approaching flame. I felt the ever-increasing heat on my skin, but did not see a way out of the smoky space. Then, as if out of nowhere, two blurry figures appeared in front of her. I couldn't see exactly what they looked like, but I felt that one of them, the taller one, was a man, and the second, very small, clearly belonged to a child. Victoria, I heard a strong male voice ahead. "Where are you, Victoria?" The voice repeated her name over and over again. She didn't try to quickly shout, "I'm here," but not a single sound escaped her throat. In desperation, the woman grabbed her own neck and suddenly heard a piercing, childish voice, "Mom, Mommy," and she began to rush around in the blinding, fiery fog, trying to reach, or at least get closer to those ghostly figures that were calling her. She understood in her soul that she definitely needed to give them a sign that she was here, that she was alive, and that everything was fine with her. However, the blurry silhouettes moved further away the closer I tried to get to Victoria. Finally, experiencing a surge of inhuman despair, the woman screamed into the void, watching the figures move away and dissolve in the smoke. Wait. Please don't leave me here. No, I want to come to you." "Wake up," called her Jack, and at that moment the woman opened her huge blue eyes. It turned out that she was still lying in her bed and her husband was sitting next to her, bending over her and forcefully shaking her shoulders so that she would wake up. Anxiety and sadness were clearly visible on the husband's face. "Great. What's wrong with you? What did you see?" Wife, not yet fully awakened from what she had seen, just shook her head and pulled her husband's hands away from her. "Reese, everything is fine, Jack. Nothing. I just had a nightmare." The young woman regained her breath with difficulty and looked tenderly at her husband. "No, don't worry. Give me a couple of minutes. My t-shirts." Victoria turned on her other side, trying to cope with the feelings that rushed over her. What she saw in the dream was so vivid and realistic that the woman could not move away from the thought that it could very well be a memory. Just what? And why didn't she see in this strange dream Jack, as if he had nothing to do with it at all? "Are you sure you don't need sedatives? I could get you some pills if you want." Looked at her husband with outright surprise. "Are you serious, honey? Do you want to turn me into a vegetable?" Jack danced for a moment, but laughed lightly and threw a pillow at him. "Yes, I was just joking, fool. Of course I don't mean anything like that." "Well, really, it's just a bad dream. There is no need to take pills every time I feel emotions." Jackie smiled, but somehow not joyfully, as if he felt guilty about something. However, quickly pretending that nothing had happened, he invited his beloved wife to drink coffee together, even baked cheesecakes for us today before rushing off to work. As long as I have lived, I am always amazed at her amazing ability to combine the talents of a housewife and a businesswoman. God, how embarrassing. Pressing her hands to her face, she said, "Victoria, it was I who had to get up early and prepare everything. Instead, you also have to strain your mother in the kitchen." Jackie just waved his hand, after which he tenderly kissed his wife on the cheek. "You just don't know her as I do. In fact, all this amateur activity with pots has always been a joy for her. Before my father died, she was an ordinary housewife for a long time, raised me, looked after my dad when he came home from work, and then, when her father died of a heart attack, she took the business seriously. Dad left us some inheritance. She used this money to open her first beauty salon." Victoria looked at her husband with sincere interest. This was the first time he had told her so openly about his family. I was still just a boy then, about 17 years old. At first, I couldn't accept this new form of my mother. And then she clearly explained to me that in this life you need to fight for yours to the end, gnawing it with your teeth, but not giving it to anyone. So I first entered college at the Faculty of Economics, and then got a job in a bank. But gradually I became one of the people and met you. Jack hugged with tenderness Victoria, and she allowed herself to be kissed for real. At some point, the woman thought that the dream she had was really just a meaningless nightmare. A couple of hours later, when the husband was already getting ready for work, the phone of Victoria suddenly burst out an insistent third. Looking at the screen, the woman was surprised to find that they were calling her from an unknown number. "Pick up the phone," he advised her, Jack throwing his jacket over his shoulders. "I'm sure you're happy about who's calling you." "Really?" Raised her eyebrows and answered the incoming call. It's you." An unfamiliar female voice squealed on the phone. "Yes," said Victoria. "And who speaks?" Said there was a second pause at the other end of the line, after which the same thin voice said offendedly, "Jack, of course. He said that you have problems with your memory, but so much so." Victoria looked at her husband again with the question, "Who is this?" But he just winked at her and pointed to his watch. "I'm in a hurry," he whispered with one lips. They hanged themselves there. After this, the husband went to work with a satisfied look, leaving Victoria in complete confusion. And she remembered that Zoe should come home in half an hour, check on her, and see if everything is okay. So, who should she have fun with, her mother-in-law or the one who's literally tearing her phone to pieces? The caller continued to attack Victoria endless questions. "Listen, don't you seriously remember us? It is me, Enan, your best friend. U.S. Jackie said that you can't get close to you while you're being treated. During this time, we were all exhausted. And yesterday he writes to us and tells us to drag you into the city. No, well, you always had a Miss Spontaneity. Sorry, of course, for such frankness. I can't stop. I tried to pacify my interlocutor. Do you want to say that you and I were once friends before the accident? I mean, are you my best friend?" Confused by the appearance of another person in her life, whom she did not remember at all, she suggested a meet in the city center, in the very cafe where they usually like to go with her husband. The woman wanted to talk to this girl and try to remember her. Still, this one insisted that they had known each other for many years. However, the meeting with my friend was not impressive. Victoria, to say the least, disappointed. Not only did she remember absolutely nothing of the things that this girl told her about, but she also turned out to be an extremely unpleasant girl in her own right. I couldn't believe that I trusted this nasty and envious girl with all my secrets. Yes, she would never share it with such a gossip. While they were sitting in the cafe, she managed to wash the bones of all of their mutual friends. And although half of them, Victoria, didn't even see her, she was offended that, and like this, without hesitation, he throws mud at everyone. "And so you're saying that you and I work together in the modeling business?" I asked at some point, Victoria to interrupt her endless dirty tirade, and paused for a second as if her internal computer was having a hard time processing this simple question. Finally, an uncertain smile appeared on her face. "Yes? And don't you remember our shows in Milan? How we discussed this famous model? She looks so beautiful in all the magazines, but in reality she is fat. I'm still amazed at what these agents saw in her." After all, the natural one was scary. Anne laughed unpleasantly, revealing her big white teeth. She continued thoughtfully, stirring the remains of her milkshake in a tall glass with a straw. "Who do I love more, dogs or cats?" I asked again. "What?" Flapping her long, thickly painted eyelashes, her friend stared at her. "And what do cats have to do with it?" Victoria looked at the girl carefully. "But this is such a simple question. You say you've known me almost since school. Then you can't help but know which animals I love more. All best friends answer such questions with ease, especially when some of them have memory problems." What I definitely didn't expect was that, and suddenly, out of the blue, he pulls out his mobile phone and starts hysterically writing something to someone in it. What are you doing?" I asked her with a smile. She wouldn't be surprised if she was posting some nasty stuff about her on the internet, but she didn't care at all. She just wanted to understand what was going on here. And she finished fiddling with her smartphone and with a changing grin, obviously intended to depict a smile, said, "I was urgently called here for filming. I would be glad to chat with you more, but unlike you, I don't have a rich husband, so I have to work hard." "Yes," and quickly jumped up from the table and sent Victoria a kiss. "Don't be upset. We'll definitely chat again later. And then, you see, you'll feel better. Tayo, dear, in touch." With these words, the red-haired gossip fled from the cafe like a bright but stupid butterfly. I couldn't get rid of the thought that with this in there was something wrong. Well, it can't be that she chose such a mercantile person as her friend. Besides, she definitely didn't know the answer to her question. And all this fuss with the phone. Yes, she was just looking for an excuse to quickly leave, and not continue to dive into slippery topics. But what could this mean? Victoria were at a loss. She had too many questions about her own past, and she had not yet received an answer to any of them. Hearing her own phone vibrate in her purse, the woman immediately picked up the phone. "Hello, honey. How are you?" I asked Jack, who called her from work. To be honest, not really, his wife admitted to him. I didn't like it at all. What kind of friend is this, who has only clothes and gossip on her mind? Is it true? There was tension in the husband's voice. You don't have to communicate with her if you want. I just thought it would be useful for you to be with old acquaintances. You said it yourself. Yes, I remember she hastened to reassure him. It's just that this meeting turned out to be not at all as sincere as I imagined. I'm going home, no Zoe already there. I could cook us all something original for dinner tonight. They chatted a little more about household chores, after which she hung up and walked home. She wanted to take a little walk to be alone with her thoughts and just relax in silence. Weather that day was simply wonderful. Spring was in full swing. Apple trees were blooming everywhere. The flower beds were full of blooming flowers. A sea of floral herbal aromas floated in the air, and Victoria lingered for a couple of minutes in one of the courtyards near the playground, looking at the little happy children playing in the sandbox. I felt a surge of incredible melancholy. What a pity that Kolya and I don't have our own baby. This is how I could now sit and watch our son or daughter. Maybe my soul would then feel much calmer. The young woman sat down on the bench, watching the children with pleasure. Some of them were swinging happily on the swings, while their mothers looked away with a proud look. Victoria. Here, they say, look, envy how happy we are growing. Suddenly, she felt her hands and feet suddenly become cold. Something seemed to switch in the young woman's head, and she clearly, as if in reality, saw herself in her arms with a small child. Lines of the newborn snored sweetly. His eyes were closed. He slept. At that moment, I was absolutely sure that I was holding my own son in my arms. However, her vision did not end there. The woman felt strong and gentle arms hug her shoulders, turned around to look at the child's father, and it was he, and to her great amazement, she saw in front of her not at all Jack. A tall, broad-shouldered, handsome man with deep dark green eyes and golden hair did not fit with the image of her husband. Jack was a stocky brunette, slender, but slightly taller than herself. This same stranger looked like he was a hero from an old fairy tale. She didn't know either the beautiful man or the child she was holding in her arms, but she was sure that both of them had the most direct relation to her. But Jackie's, there's still something she's not telling her. Is it possible that before him Victoria was there another? But then where are they? What happened to them? Intrigued, Victoria immediately hurried home. She eagerly awaited her husband's return so she could talk to him about her vision. Zoe, seeing how worried she was, she herself became nervous. Having seated her daughter-in-law in the kitchen, she tried to quickly ask her about what happened and how the meeting with her friend went. However, Victoria, at that moment, I was by no means in the mood for a sincere conversation with my mother-in-law. Maybe I can help you with something. Looking in Victoria in the eyes, asked the businesswoman. I'm afraid that only Jack. You. She sighed. I need to talk to him very seriously. A shadow ran across the woman's face, the nature of which was impossible to determine. The young woman referred to the fact that she needed rest, after which she went upstairs to her room. That evening, when Jack came back home, Victoria immediately called him over and honestly told him about her sudden memory. After listening to his wife, the businessman was a little confused at first, but quickly pulled himself together. I was amazed at how quickly the reactions on his face changed. In a few moments, she managed to discern surprise, anger, confusion, and then an imperturbable calmness that hid all other feelings underneath. My DSCMG, darling, listen to me very carefully. The husband began, placing his wife on the bed. What you are talking about is impossible, but why? She looked at him incomprehensibly. Jack, I feel that these people are somehow connected to me very strongly, these emotions, this image. It was so real, so familiar. If there is something that I don't know about myself, you just have to tell me everything. Jack, he covered his face with his hands, as if trying to isolate himself from his own feelings. The doctors warned me that such consequences were possible, he said slowly. You've been in a coma for too long, and part of your brain still remains not fully restored. Now, what do you mean, Jack? I asked him again. What is wrong with me? The husband looked at her with sadness, even some guilt. Forgive me, I should have told you about everything earlier. No, What are you talking about? Can you explain? The husband carefully took Victoria by the hands. No hallucinations. The doctor said that this is how the consequences of a coma can manifest themselves. Victoria, she couldn't immediately comprehend what her husband was telling her. When it dawned on her, she shook her head negatively. No, Jack, no. The fact of the matter is that it was not a figment of my imagination. I'm sure I saw part of my past, but I cannot understand when it was and who these people are to me. Jack looked at his wife with inexpressible regret. Honey, it happens sometimes. Perhaps you experienced a powerful emotional shock when you looked at your children. So your mind tried to deceive you, to pass off wishful thinking as reality. No, she continued to persist. I know for sure that I've seen these people before. Jack, I didn't tell you about my dreams, that nightmare. My husband guessed right away. Yeah, she nodded. Victoria, it seems to me that I saw the same man and boy there. Only it seemed to be later than the memories on the playground. There's a face here. Jack, it immediately became dark. Victoria, let's not try to find an explanation for your nonsense. Of course, I'm not very pleased that you see some strange man in your visions. But as for the child, she jumped out of bed and threw out her hands nervously. Yes, I also wanted to ask why we still don't have children. You just said that the memory could have been triggered by children playing. What did you mean? Instead of answering, the husband slowly rose from the bed, after which he calmly walked to a small cabinet with medicines and took out a syringe with a sedative. Noticing this, she stepped back. No, Jack, I don't want a sedative. Explain to me how those kids in my visions are connected. Jack, what are you doing? The young woman's eyes filled with pure horror as her husband began to advance on her, holding a ready injection in his hand. His face was completely impenetrable. Honey, everything is fine, don't worry. You just need to calm down a little. Look at you, you're shaking all over. Victoria, she retreated further and further until she finally felt something hard under her back. It was a wall. The young woman's heart filled with panic. She turned around trying to find a way out. But at that moment, her husband suddenly grabbed her hands, making it impossible to resist. Jack, please don't. I don't want to. I'm scared. Jackie pulled his wife to him with force and in one deft movement stuck a syringe with a sedative into her neck. Don't be afraid, honey. Don't be afraid. Everything is fine. I will never let you go. Never. We will always be together. Before your eyes, Victoria. Everything immediately floated away. The room was instantly filled with fog. When Jackie unclenched his embrace and carefully laid her on the bed, the woman looked at him with a completely blank look. Honey, we don't have children because you're barren. The husband said unexpectedly, affectionately. I didn't want to talk about it so as not to traumatize your already fragile psyche. However, now I see that we cannot do without it. I'll have to call you a psychotherapist tomorrow. He will prescribe you a new course of medications, and you will definitely improve everything. She didn't know what kind of drug her husband was injecting her with, but she was sure that it was definitely not a sedative. More like tranquilizers. Suddenly, it flashed through the woman's head, somewhere on the farthest border of consciousness between sleep and reality. We also gave these to horses on our farm. Victoria, she didn't have time to grasp onto this thought because everything around her suddenly plunged into darkness. She woke up only the next morning. Jackie wasn't near, so I carefully slipped into the shower to wash away the remnants of sleep in a semi-conscious state caused by strange medications. Lord, didn't I really dream all this? I thought Victoria standing in front of powerful jets of hot water. Did I really remember something that Kalia didn't like? And that's why he did this to me. The woman shuddered with disgust. I remember the terrible expression that flashed on my face, Jack, the moment he gave her the injection. God, he looked like he was crazy. I can't stay in this house next to him anymore. I need answers. Slipping out of the bathroom, Victoria, I got dressed and carefully went down to the first floor. The woman heard people quietly talking about something in the